Day one's discussions, as mentioned by Jazan, riveting, and I promise you today's will be equally engaging. We therefore are looking forward to your feedback and to the incisive questions posed to our various presenters and panelists. We have a lot to get through, so let's go straight to our first presenter, Ms. Michelle Marius, who's a long-standing partner of the CTU and who will present on the ITU's Giga project. Over to you, Michelle.
Morning, everyone. And just thank you so much for having me. Let me just start my presentation because, as Trevor says, there seems to be quite a bit to get through. One moment. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the Giga project, and this is a very exciting development worldwide. And it is a collaboration between the ITU and UNICEF, conceptualized in 2019. And its objective is to connect every school to the internet and every young person to information, opportunity, and choice. And I think that we can all agree that over the last decade or so, there has been just a lot of discussion about e-learning and the initiatives to equip students with digital devices, be there, laptop computers, tablet computers. And pre-2020, I think we would have agreed that there was still a long way to go to equipping classrooms with the necessary tools to facilitate digital education. However, with the pandemic, I think we all realized, though, that learning is not limited to the classroom, and digital education and e-learning have become even more important to facilitate and support remote and distance learning modalities. Since intermittently over nearly 2 years now, that schools across the region have had to close, and that has affected education. So, although Giga is still relatively young, it has been receiving a lot of visibility. As I said, it was conceptualized in 2019. Of course, it would have taken a little time for it to get its legs underneath it. However, the United Nations Secretary General has recognized Giga as part of its digital roadmap to achieve universal connectivity. And it is, I think, helping Giga to gain traction worldwide. So how does Giga work? Ultimately, it seeks to solve big industry problems, especially as it relates to school connectivity, which is where its objectives are. That is a challenge in many countries. And I think just to sort of step back a little bit, I think that we can appreciate that with that in most countries worldwide, internet access is readily available in the more populous areas such as cities, major towns, and areas categorized as urban. But as the population density decreases, which tends to happen as one moves out of the more urban to the more rural areas, internet service and internet access can be a challenge. And one of the big reasons for that is that the deployment of the needed infrastructure, the cables and the exchanges and all of those things is not cost effective for the network operators, and they're unlikely to get a decent return on their investment. However, and in the meantime, within the context of education, which is our focus, it then means that schools in rural areas often or quite frequently do not necessarily have internet access. And so, for example, here in the Caribbean, and I can talk about Jamaica, which is where I'm based, that there's students who have not received any sort of tuition since February, March of 2020, when the pandemic started. So, what Giga hopes to do is to use data to create innovative solutions for which financial support can be sought. Okay, so now Giga, how does it work? And it comprises 4 pillars: mapping, finance, connect, and empower. And under mapping, what you're really looking at is getting concise data about the infrastructure. Where does all of the pieces lie? Where the schools are located? What network infrastructure is close by? And understanding the lay of the land for all intents and purposes. Finance, whatever solutions one decides to propose will probably need some backing. Many of the countries because it is not cost effective, one may need to have an influx of funds from other sources. And so this is where finance comes in. Connect is actually dealing with the deployment of the infrastructure. So whatever new networks need to be rolled out. And then empower, part of the Giga objective is to connect and ensure that every young person has access to information, opportunity, and choice. And so this is now going to be the services, the platforms that sit on top of the infrastructure. So these are some of the areas that we probably need that Giga has conceptualized. And as is noted here, the mapping is well on the way, and I have some slides on that. And finance and the connect pillars are coming on stream. So it's very exciting for Giga. And as I've said, looking at the mapping, here we have at least what it looks like spatially. And here it is, we have a global map. So far, over 1 million schools have been mapped, in 41 countries. And if one wants further information, you can go to the projectconnect.unicef.org website. Now, just looking at finance for a very brief moment, relative to all of the work that probably needs to be done worldwide, Giga is estimating that it's probably going to cost, 420 billion US dollars at least. But we can't really sit on our laurels and just wait for this money to roll in before we start to get things going. So a concerted effort is being made to raise the funds, and there has been some success along that path. But we also recognize that as Giga continues to realize successes, continues to have an impact on school connectivity and connecting every young person to information, opportunity, and choice, that more donors will be encouraged to participate in the thrust that is Giga. And as it relates to this connectivity, I just briefly want to say a few words on it. Now, granted that the focus of Giga is school connectivity, and what one may find is that in rural areas, as I had mentioned before, that schools may not have internet access. And yes, you may have to run, cabling and the infrastructure, or even look at it from whether it's wireless connectivity from far distances. It's going to be expensive. Some solutions may be more expensive than others, but what you can do to sort of spread the cost, make it actually have a greater impact, is not necessarily just focus on connecting the schools, but connecting the communities around the schools. So households, government offices, or your town halls, your post offices, and other sorts of structures in the neighboring communities. And the ITU has developed this document, the Last Mile Connectivity Solution Guide. And it basically spells out the 4 steps that are needed, whereas identifying unconnected communities, or communities without connectivity, reviewing existing connectivity options and solutions, then looking at the technological solutions and figuring out which ones might be financially viable, affordable, sustainable, etc. And then putting in place interventions such as the policies, regulations, strategies, etc., to allow for the extension of the affordable connectivity services. And here we just have some successes for Giga. So as at December 2021, Giga had mapped over 1 million schools. It has raised $22 million. However, it's able to mobilize considerably more funding. 19 countries have joined worldwide, that is formally. And we have several partners, Ericsson, Dubai, Musk Foundation, etc. So it's still early and it's still exciting. And of course, we also have another illustration of what the maps look like and what the dots represent. So it helps to spatially give you a sense as to how many schools are in a country, which ones might be connected, and the stage of connectivity that they're at. And just looking now at some of the ways in which Giga has been helping countries. And I have 3 slides on this, and then we begin to wrap up. So the first one I want to just highlight is Honduras. And basically, similar to what I just outlined about using the schools as almost like a beacon for where connectivity challenges may exist in the neighboring communities. So this was what is being done in Honduras, and where you now have that the households around schools are being connected to help increase economies of scale, in addition to connecting schools that are not yet connected or have need to have their internet connectivity improved. Another example is in Kyrgyzstan. And by, again, understanding the lay of the land in terms of the mapping, etc., we were able to, by engaging the service providers, help the country to lower its school connectivity bill by, almost 40%. So it really can have an impact, because especially I think with education, it is such a critical part of our countries, of our sectors, but it is largely underfunded, relatively speaking, in the region. It is a challenge. And so to the extent that there can be savings that can be realized, I think it is such a benefit, especially when there are always other areas for which there is demand for more funds to do, better and more wonderful things. And I just wanted to touch on Giga in the Caribbean, and so far it's in the OECS. 9 of the 11 member states of the OECS, that is 11 including the associate members. The OECS does not necessarily make any distinction between its full and associate members, but these are the countries that have signed on, and we're still awaiting for other Caribbean countries to join. We are in discussions with many other countries. However, the agreements have not yet been formalized. And in terms of the work that Giga has been doing so far, one of the big things is that, and since the focus initially has been on school connectivity, I think across the OECS, and with the focal point being the OECS Commission, there was a concern that there were schools in the OECS that were not connected. But based on a study that Giga did, we found out that virtually all of the schools have internet connectivity. That's specifically the government and government-assisted schools. But affordability and quality of service remains a challenge. And when we say quality of service on the school compound, you have coverage issues, poor service generally. So these are things now that we are working to help to provide recommendations on. But currently, some of the work that is ongoing in the region, and that is the OECS region, is mapping all the schools, real-time connectivity monitoring, so that at least we can begin to get a better sense of the quality of service, network resiliency, child online protection, helping to make recommendations for a policy and a strategic framework. And a little later in the morning, my colleague Dion Olton will be delivering a presentation on that. We're also looking at internet service quality as well. And to wrap up, I think the thing that I would like to leave you all with, is the fact that Giga does not go into a country and work unilaterally. It really forges and seeks to forge and maintain partnerships within the countries, and I guess primarily with the governments and the leadership in various countries. And I think what this slide highlights, though, is that governments need to make a concerted effort. Their cooperation, their support is vital. And there ought to be a willingness to do what is necessary to move their countries closer towards universal education. And as you can see from the highlighted text, political support, having the necessary policies in place, as well as a suitable regulatory environment, allowing access to school data, school location data, that is, and also being amenable to considering different types of investment. And I think these are some of the factors that moving forward countries ought to consider, especially if they're keen to join Giga, because I think what we realize though is just that education is so critical in our countries. And with the pandemic, I think we realize though that there may be a major cohort of students that are going to be left behind. And to the extent that we really make a concerted effort to upgrade the structures around e-learning, digital education, etc., because I think ultimately what we are finding is that learning is happening and learning should happen whether or not it is inside or outside the classroom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle, with that very comprehensive review of the Giga project. And I think that Trevor, who is moderating this session today, has a preference for probably fielding some questions that are already coming in.
Yes.
So we take a few minutes to do that so we keep on time.
Yes, okay, very much so, because we do have a question and answer session, but we thought, I'm thinking that it'll be so long before the audience gets to ask questions on Michelle. So as Michelle mentioned then, it's a very exciting project. Basically, I'd like to say that education is the future for all of us. It's obviously important for the students themselves. Without educating our students, we have nothing for ourselves. They will be providing for us in the future. We have one question here from Thomas of Dominica, and he says, infrastructure resilience a key subcomponent of the mapping connectivity pillars, knowing both the engineering challenge and natural disaster phenomenon in many of the countries. Is the project technology agnostic and thus sustainable financing for satellite technology in remote regions? So I don't know if Michelle, would you care to respond to Mr. Thomas?
Yes. Yeah, so the infrastructure resilience is something that we are definitely considering. And as you may have noted in my, what would have been, the penultimate slide of the main presentation, I mentioned that a network resiliency study is being conducted. And I think certainly clearly we are in terrain is one thing, but being in the hurricane belt for many of these countries, I think we recognize that just the resiliency of the network is something that we definitely need to look at. And infrastructure resiliency, though, is just one component. We also need to be looking at, just whether or not, and the extent to which, especially within our countries, the socioeconomic elements and factors that may affect the resiliency of the network as well. So these are things that we are also considering. And then there was a point about technology being whether or not one is technology agnostic. And that definitely is the case, because clearly, once you start to put constraints on what technologies you can use, you also limit the solutions that you may consider. So I think, however, and I think I just need to say this, is that we also need to be mindful about the regulatory and policy environment in specific countries, because if by chance they may, for whatever reason, have certain technology specifications within their structures, then that may be something that we need to consider. But I certainly recognize, and I'm of the view that we ought to take a posture of being technology agnostic, such that we can ensure that the best and most innovative solutions can at least be considered.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And I'd just like to say that on behalf of the CTU, that the CTU believes in ICT for all, and it was very interesting to hear your presentation about the empower aspect of this, ensuring that as you said, every young person has access to information,
opportunity and choice.
Opportunities and choice. So
yes.
We much support your project, and we wish you the best of luck with it. Let us move on.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much
much
again,
indeed.
Misha. And I just very quickly before I introduce our next speaker, I know that people are going to be interested in the presentations, which will all be made available on the CTU website and on the platforms. I'm not necessarily, I'll double check whether it's in real time, but we also want to encourage you as well, if you're joining us and if you've been with us, to kindly rate the sessions before you exit the platform. Today, I'll give you some more information about that. Let's keep on track here now at just moving down from 9:20. We're on time. We now have a presentation from Mr. Sabino Garcia, who is the manager of Google Workspace for Education. And his presentation is Google Classroom, where teaching and learning come together. Sabino, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Good morning for you. Well, thank you for the introduction, and let me share my screen and start. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see, yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, and well, let's start. Well, my name is Sabino Garcia. I'm going to talk about one of the most powerful tools that we have in Google Workspace for Education. This is Google Classroom, where teaching and learning come together. And well, you can have this tool in your school, in each school of your countries. Okay. And well, in first place, let's talk about some numbers. As you can see in the screen, Google Classroom, as part of Google Workspace for Education suite, has become one of the most powerful tools in the face-to-face learning in schools, in the remote learning, and also in the hybrid learning for the pandemic. And Google Classroom has become the #1 tool because schools, teachers, and students have in one place digital thematic tools, reports, security, video conference, cloud storage, etc. And all these tools allow to collaborate since the place you are. And well, in Google for Education, we have the commitment of enable teachers and students with tools that impact the learning in every place, using any device that they have. Our mission is to provide to your school community tools that elevate teaching and learning, collaboration, and productivity, all in one secure platform. Sorry. And we want to keep it simple because we want to provide easy to use tools that let individuals confidently communicate, collaborate, and teach and learn together. All these tools, we want to be helpful and provide real-time collaboration, instant connection, and efficient productivity that help everyone to stay focused on teaching and learning. And the most important thing is these tools be flexible and evolve with the unique needs of your institution. And the most trustful tool whom privacy and security accomplish the most rigorous education standards. And as you can see here, Google Classroom is an easy-to-use tool that helps educators to manage their learning experiences, where your teachers will be able to create powerful content of their computers, from phones, tablets, and one of the most important here is that they can measure the advance of their students, so they can adapt the knowledge of each class and for each student. In Google Classroom, teachers can work with some applications, and they can create their own documents to work with their students, and they also can integrate here another tools that maybe they can find in the internet. The objective is that teachers can promote the collaboration, the productivity, and work in real time. They can work in real time with Google documents like docs, slides, presentations, spreadsheets, and they can work together in one tool that is Google Classroom. Even if you are working in the school, in your home, or maybe if they are working in a hybrid classroom, they can use Google Classroom, okay? We know that internet sometimes is hard to get. So if you are working with a limited or even a non-internet connection, you can work with an offline environment. With Google Classroom, you can enable the offline mode in Google Classroom, and your students can work since the place they are, and well, they can work without internet. And in that case, students can work their homework, and when they recover the internet connections, their homework will be delivered to the teacher for their grading. This is very important because they can work in every place they are, and well, it's a very helpful tool for teachers and their students. And now your teachers can be focused on teaching and not only in technology. As you can see here, they can work with their students and grade their homeworks, their documents, very easy and very fast. We want to teachers use technology and don't feel that they have more work to do, and that's why they can export all their grades into a spreadsheet and track the students' progress in one place. It's important maybe to mention that also an educator can provide in real-time guidance using the real-time collaboration tools to combine the learning, and with the video conference tool of Google Workspace for Education, they call Google Meet, maybe they can work also. So maybe they can create, or maybe they also can customize each homework, and maybe if they want to leave or deliver a student's work, they can leave it, or maybe they can send a homework for a group of the students. So they can personalize this education. This is a very important thing because they can personalize the education. With Google Classroom, your teachers can help their students. They can create or organize assignments, or even they can program their work and their assignments. And their assignments will be published when they need it. And the assignments will be scheduled in the student's calendar, in the Google Classroom, and also they receive an email with their duty. We also are working with critical thinking because we want to that the students create original documents. With Google Classroom, you can compare the students' work with all that is published on the internet, or they will stop creating copy-paste documents, right? And they create their own contents. And also that documents will be compared with an internal repository of documents that is created each time that the teachers use the originality report tool in Classroom. So we are ready to create original documents. Take decisions is very important. Take all that data that is created is very important for teachers. So, and also this is very important for the school administrators. So every day data is created. Now you and your teacher can analyze that data that is created for your students to take decisions on what is happening each day. So it's very important to have all this data, but work with all this. So if someone here is the IT manager, well, you can also have access to more data because you, as with the admin tools of Google Workspace for Education, you can investigate specific events if you need it. So you can take actions, and with teachers, you can help students in a timely manner. Maybe, as I told you at the beginning, over 190 million of students and educators are using Google Classroom worldwide. And if you want to know more examples, you can go to the Google for Education webpage and see how we are working with some schools, universities, regions, and countries. You can also find cases of use of the complete Google for Education environment using Google Workspace, maybe the conference tools, Google Classroom, and maybe you can see how Chromebooks works and working all together. And Google Workspace for Education and Google Classroom were created to make easier teachers' life. Now your teachers can work faster and provide feedback to their students and in an easy way. So even if year after year they can replicate their classes and reach all their class content, they can work together with the Google Classroom things. With Google Classroom teachers, they can create their personalized contents, they can create documents, quizzes, they can create questions to start maybe a class, and they can create all the topics that they need for each class. Also, they can create and manage multiple classes. Also, they can create one content and publish in different classes or personalize the content ad hoc to each class. Educators can also plan the work and schedule tasks for their students. As I told you, they can track each student and their advance. They have in Classroom one tab that they provide all the information of this classroom and what is happening with each student. Educators can also plan the work and, well, track each student in their advance. Also, we know that learners works with another tools like Kahoot, Nearpod, Adobe Spark, and others. So that's why Google is working with these partners, and very soon teachers will be able to integrate all these tools into Google Classroom. Okay, so we are working to give you a very helpful tool and be productive with all this. Your teacher now can grade assignments in every place that you want. And with a friendly user interface, they can grade even if they are working in their computers, tablets, phones, and they can add their students private comments if they need it. And also, students now can upload their assignments in the Google documents or upload images, as you can see here, of their work. And it's very important to say those grades will be exported to an spreadsheet, and your students' information systems can get all that information. Talking about documents, your teacher can provide positive comments in their students' work or provide feedback in order to create a better learning environment. For a better guidance, teachers can create their own rubrics and they guide their students to create great words, and also those rubrics can also be used in another assignments. So teachers praise once and they can use it multiple times. If your teachers need, they can create notifications to the parents or the guardians to summarize all the students' work. So, as you can see, you will find Google Classroom in Google Workspace for Education as part of this productivity suite that Google has created for educational institutions. They communicate, to work in real time, and always work with security and the privacy of the information. Remember, we are working with something that is essential, the privacy, because you are working with personal information, and our students, maybe it's personal information of your teachers and, well, also the staff. And, well, there is a lot of information on this slide, but you can start working with Google Workspace for Education with a free version that we have called Education Fundamentals. But if you want to increase capabilities of the suite, you can ask for the paid editions, who gives you more to increase the security data analytics, the originality report, the Google Meet features, or create more interactive classes. And in the near future, as I talk, we can see here how to sync your classroom rosters with the student information systems. So I invite you to know more about Google Workspace for Education in Google for Edu webpage. And we will have a meeting with us, and you will find the best edition for your schools. And well, as software as a service, remember, Google Workspace for Education, Google Classroom, is constantly evolving. So you give more features that help educators to improve their students' learning outcomes. And so if you want to know more about Classroom and Workspace, well, you can read more in our blog and see how these fantastic tools is updating each day. So maybe the next steps is that you can email us or email me, and well, we can have a conversation and see how we can implement this powerful tool in your schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation on Google Classroom. Sabino Garcia, who's the manager of Google Workspace for Education. And as is the preference of my moderator here, we have actually at this point.
We have a couple of very interesting questions for Mr. Garcia. One question posed by Mr. Robert Geist of Dominica and in the education sector. He says one important feature that they desire in their Google suites that they use is the addition of breakout rooms. Asking why is that not a standard feature of the classroom suite like it is in Zoom, and who do we contact for this addition, for this add-on? Is it yourself, or do you point Mr. Geist in the right direction?
Okay, well, Google Workspace for Education is a complete suite. This is not only video conference tool, so you can work with documents, you can work with Google Forms. You can have a storage in the Google Cloud called Drive for Education. So you can have all these tools in one place. So it's very important to consider that Google Workspace for Education is a complete suite, and Google Classroom is just one piece of all these suites. So you can work with us, and maybe you can see how powerful these tools are.
Great, okay, thank you. And so if Mr. Geist has a follow-up question, can he contact you directly by email?
Yeah, he gave his email.
Yeah, I know he's given his email.
Yeah, you have in my email.
Right, no, I understand.
And-
I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
you
yeah.
first person to talk to.
Yeah, you can write me, and well, it will be my pleasure to have a talk with you. And please, if you need some advice, you can reach me. And also, we can talk what is happening in your school, what are your needs, and well, each school has a particular need, so we can work together, as you can see here in Google Classroom.
Okay, and another question, this one coming from Lawrence, they ask, is there a feature in Google Classroom which allows multiple individuals to monitor classes without enrolling in the class as a teacher? It's important for administrators to be able to view classroom activity. So is that a feature that the person's asking of Google Classroom?
Yeah, you can work with you can as a teacher, you can work with one class or multiple classes. You can create content for one class or multiple content. One of the new things that we are evolving in Google Classroom is that you can work one time. So you can create maybe one assignment for multiple classes. So we are reducing the time that people is working on in their classes. So it's easy to get all this information in one place, and maybe you can also create one class sometime. Maybe this year we are working in one class, and the next year we will have new students. So we can duplicate this Google Classroom, not all the work and all the comments that we create for your students now, but we can create a new class with all that content, and maybe we can reach all these class with new content or with some updates. And this is very important because we are not working just for a single time. We are working with for the future. So that's why Google Classroom is important for our teachers.
Just a quick follow-up, but is it possible, if I'm an administrator in a school system, can I join classes without being in as a teacher? So I would just monitor, and people, the teacher, maybe the students in the class may not know that I'm monitoring. Is that possible?
Yeah. School administrators can create that classes and add the students to that class. And well, one important thing and one of the updates of Google Classroom is that maybe some of your students leave those classes. So we are improving here this tool, because they can be added to this classroom, but they can leave that classroom. So this is important. So school administrators can create that, and or maybe the teacher can add their own students. So all that information all that data that is created can be exported to the school's students administration system.
Yes. Mr. Garcia, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation and powerful tool that Google Classroom is bringing to the world, in fact, but of course, most importantly. Okay, let me hand over.
Okay, thanks again, Savina. Thank you very much. And just encourage people to use the platform to engage more expansively with the speakers. That's the whole point of having the interactivity. And you can engage with specifically and have conversations, including using the email contacts and so forth. There's quite a bit of chatter going on in there. So please, flag up a speaker directly and carry on the conversation. Okay, we now enter a session on promoting education through satellite activity. And this one is a Jamaica case study. This is a joint presentation. And so let's meet the presenters. In this session, we have Mr. Michael Lubin, Vice President, Corporate Development, Viasat, Mr. Chris Daring, Chief Executive Officer of ReadyNet, and Dr. Maria Myers Hamilton, Managing Director, of the Spectrum Management Authority of Jamaica. Mr. Pravat, I'm going to throw it back to you because I'm seeing it in very bold red. I suppose you are taking us through with the various presenters here.
No. How are we going to do? The presenters.
Yeah, they're going to present.
They're going to present, and then if anything, I'm sure we'll get some interesting questions.
Great. So first up, we have Michael Lubin.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much.
So we are controlling your presentation, Mr. Lubin, so we will put up the presentation now for you.
I appreciate that. Let me begin by thanking you, Trevor, and the CTU Secretary General, Rodney Taylor, and the entire CTU team for giving Viasat this opportunity to speak today at this important forum hosted by the CTU in conjunction with UNESCO and the ITU. Perhaps it was said best by the Honorable Dr. Didicus Jules yesterday when he said that the imperative of ICT in education is as necessary and transformational technology driving learning. In my own background, I started out as an academic and an educator and made an unexpected transition some 40 plus years ago to high technology and ICT. I have therefore had a very long passion for the intersection of technology and education and how technology can transform education and educational delivery systems. It is very clear that connectivity is key to ICT transformation, and the COVID pandemic has made it even more clear that connectivity is going to be critical, not only currently, but as a part of a hybrid new educational delivery system that will be both online and in person. So with that, let me begin this discussion of promoting education through satellite connectivity and how that applied to a case study in Jamaica. Next slide, please. Viasat itself is a 35-year-old company. The three founders are still active, and I hired two of the three founders back in about 1979. So we've had a very lengthy relationship. It has grown since 1986 to over $2.5 billion in sales. And I'm told as of yesterday, we're approaching 7,000 people in over 60 countries around the world. We are a vertically integrated ISP. We will be a global ISP over the next few years. And we lead the world in ultra-high capacity satellites, three of which we will launch in the next 2 years, each with 1 terabit per second or 1,000 gigabits per second of capacity. I'll mention what that metric really means in terms of education shortly. We inherently design resilience and security into connectivity solutions. This is increasingly important because of the security needs of making sure that only proper information gets to children and educators. Security is very important for protecting personal information as well. We are very active in community and school connectivity, and because of the connectivity and the realization that it enables both online education as well as telehealth, we are actually experimenting, bringing both telehealth and educational content through connectivity to a number of communities, including those in Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, Nigeria, and Jamaica, with Chris Daring talking more about the Jamaica experience a little bit later. We have other partners throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, ReadyNet, of course, Intercorp of Peru, and the Central American Bottling Company of Guatemala, which has bottling plants in, I think, 11 countries throughout Latin America. And we can talk later why we have a partner that's in that particular business, but it has to do with being able to distribute into the most remote and rural communities in a secure fashion. And we have connectivity throughout most of the Caribbean today. And at the end of the year, we will have connectivity everywhere in the Caribbean and for all countries in the CTU. Next slide, please. I like to view the digital divide and education gap in three sectors. The one that's most obvious, I think, is the school gap. And much work has gone into connecting schools. Project Giga, of course, is mapping schools, starting to connect schools, is even discussing raising funds to help governments connect those schools. So the school gap has been sort of a primary focus of education and of connectivity. However, the chairperson of the FCC, Jessica Rosenworcel, for years has discussed that the next phase must be the homework gap, that there must be good connectivity in the home so that the parents can help the students, so that the teachers can interact with the students after school hours, and so those students can continue their education in the home. I'll discuss how there can be a relationship between bridging the divide for schools and bridging the divide for the homework gap. Another that hasn't been talked as much about is the teacher gap for communications. Teachers themselves need good connectivity for their own continuing education, for interacting with students and with parents, and also for preparing their curricula and downloading that curricula to the students and grading assignments, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one thing that I would like to present from a technical viewpoint has to do with finances and economics, because connectivity has a cost and all ministries of education and nations have budgets. All wireless connections have inherent costs associating with delivery of gigabytes. Whether it's cellular, whether it's satellite, and even whether it's really some terrestrial solutions. Wired connections, we know, have some security, resilience, and implementation delay issues, and they can have very high costs. And some of those elements with wired connections have encouraged countries and school boards alike to look for alternatives, wireless alternatives, like satellite alternatives. And for the first time, technology has advanced to the point with satellites that satellites can now deliver gigabytes anywhere as cheaply as cellular can in the densest urban areas and as fast. This has not been true for the over 40 years that I have been involved in satellite communications, but it is now true. And this presents a fantastic opportunity for the application of these new satellite technologies in education in an economical, secure, and transformational way. Next slide, please. Once one has connectivity, one can think about other elements of the technology ecosystem that can actually promote enhanced education. One thing that can be done is to cache educational content, including lessons, ancillary materials, locally, either at a school or at a community hotspot, or even in the terminal in an individual's home. This content can be transmitted when the networks are not that active, downloaded, cached, and actually made available to the student, the parent, or the teacher with zero rating, meaning that it would not be charged against the connectivity costs to the individuals. So zero-rated educational content to cache through multicasting technology, I think, has a fantastic future. And a number of organizations are innovating in this area, including UNICEF, ourselves, Public Broadcasting System in the United States, and a number of other entities. Another ancillary advantage of high-speed satellite connectivity is that we can extend that connectivity from the school to the neighborhoods and homes around the schools to address both the teacher gap and the homework gap. One can do that by either enhancing the network through new mesh Wi-Fi technologies or small cell LTE. And we are experimenting in a number of places with both so that we can go from schools and community centers into individuals' homes. And of course, that I think will be transformational in education. Perhaps less obvious is the potential use of schools as community centers for enhanced telehealth. The state of Utah recently acquired an enhanced telehealth platform that is being put in 275 primary and secondary schools and is being served by only 5 nurse practitioners. And the community and the students are getting telehealth at the school through the system and through the connectivity to the school. I can discuss later some of the advances in telehealth that I think could also help not only the educational future of the students, but the healthcare future of the students as well as the community. Next slide, please. Now that the technology is affordable, is ubiquitous, and is fast, what are the enlightened policies that need addressing through not only the ministries of education, but spectrum organizations and other ministries in countries? It seems counterproductive to burden educational connectivity with taxes, duties, and other burdens on satellite equipment and satellite services. I believe that these kinds of financial burdens just act as headwinds and obstacles to such connectivity. They need to be addressed either by reduction or complete elimination for programs that are in the national interest, like education. Also, by making satellite more affordable compared to other technologies, all connectivity solutions will be reduced in cost because of increased competition. So it seems only natural that this should be investigated by enlightened policymakers. If we want to extend from the school into the homes so that we can enhance the education to the students and the teachers, we hope that low band and mid band spectrum can be made available so that we can put these low cost mesh Wi-Fi as well as small cell LTE enhancements into the neighborhoods and carry the connectivity into the homes. This actually is being done in Mexico through a public-private partnership between the Mexican government and a company called Altan Redis, and we will take advantage of that in the future. In the United States, the FCC has made 2.5 and 3.5 gigahertz spectrum available to tribes when such spectrum is not being used by the operators that have won such spectrum at auctions. So I urge the spectrum administrations and the various ministries to consider making such spectrum available on a financially attractive basis to operators that will use it in the national interest, in particular in expanding education from schools into homes. And then, as we all know, there are new technologies of low Earth orbiting satellites that are using mega constellations of small satellites to provide connectivity. I would ask the administrations to assess these technologies for space safety and space equity before allowing their use in their countries. A lot has been talked about that some of these mega constellations may impair all of space for future use, which would, of course, thwart a lot of the progress we've all made to connect the unconnected and bridge the digital divide. Next slide, please. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Chris Daring from ReadyNet about the case study of how we supplied connectivity to a number of schools in Jamaica quite recently. So with that, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. Morning, everybody. So the Caribbean, I think, has been very fortunate that a company like Viasat has actually given it the attention that it has given. We in the Caribbean, because of our small size, our small population, small economies, tend a lot to be overlooked by the larger operators and capacity providers. So, you know, they're either looking for North America or large South American markets in general. But Viasat hasn't been that type of operator. And we were very fortunate in the sense that in 2019, we had conducted a trial with Viasat of delivering satellite internet into a very remote community called Mullet Hall, which has become quite famous. And when we injected that satellite internet into that community, at the launch, we invited all of the various regulators, World Bank, IMF, IDB, the government officials, etc., to actually come and experience what true rural communities experience in Jamaica. Because we in Kingston, we're spoiled. We pay, 3,000 Jamaican dollars a month. We have connectivity when we need it, etc. We have all the mobile operators. We have fiber operators. I have 2 fiber operators on my road offering the services daily. But here in Mullet Hall, up in the Buff Bay Valley of the Blue Mountains, a community of about 1,000 people, there was a grandmother who gave a sort of welcome speech to all these dignitaries. And she explained what her WhatsApp experience was. Once a week, she would type up all her messages. Then she would take a taxi, drive, and this is a rural taxi, drive 30 minutes down to Buff Bay where she could get connectivity, and she would send and receive all her WhatsApp messages. And there was a visible, an audible gasp in the audience because people, here it was a grandmother was using WhatsApp like it was the old time telex and telegrams. Once a week, getting her messages and sending her messages. And I think it dawned on everybody that, look, we have to approach the rural communities in a totally different way. Well, COVID-19 pandemic then hit. And, obviously it has caused tremendous dislocation for our economies and devastation of businesses, etc. But the good of it is that it certainly highlighted for everybody the wide disparity between those that have connectivity and those that do not. So we were called in on an emergency basis by the Ministry of Education and basically said, look, and the regulators, of course, and said, look, what can you do? We've seen satellite work. We have all of these schools that have no connectivity. How can we get this done quickly? Well, one of the biggest challenges was the fact that the Viasat regulations were probably written in 1970 when the only satellite operators were using big Viasats or satellite earth stations, no longer the sort of mobile small terminals that are set up across, you see set up with a direct TV and Viasat, etc. So that had to be changed. And the regulators jumped on it. They got that changed. They certainly initially waived all the excessive fees. We were talking about 6,000 US per dish per annum at the time, which just wouldn't make sense for the Ministry of Education to be paying that kind of tax for them to connect the schools. And so they had that waived. Then there was Viasat coming into the fore and said, look, let's just get these 100 schools connected to demonstrate just how quickly it can be done. And I think that's one of the things that I would certainly love to emphasize. There's nothing that could roll out connectivity as quickly as satellite. We were awarded 100 schools, or we were assigned 100 schools to get them connected. And it took us 48 days during a torrential rainfall season that we were having. So we probably lost about 10 or 11 days just of torrential rainfall. And I always say that it took us longer to get to these communities and to get to the schools than to actually install internet. It would take us a couple of hours to install and sometimes 4 or 5 hours to get to these locations, mainly because of the torrential rainfall, but also because of some of the locations. These are very deep rural locations where, we tend to build these communities down in the valleys. If I build them on the hilltop, might have been a little easier to get to them, certainly wirelessly. And the other point that I would make is that being wireless, we've just simply had less points of failure. In a previous life, I was chairman of a major telco company that, we had a lot of wired services. And wired, it seemed to be the Rolls Royce, fiber, etc., of telecommunications. But here in the Caribbean, and certainly in Jamaica, I don't know if there are any other countries that crash into telephone poles, branches and trees blow down on wires as often. And so you're constantly having this truck roll to repair various services and reconnect. And of course, trying to find where there's that cable break or that fiber break is also an issue, and that takes time. So even the maintenance has been a lot easier. We literally parachute in with a satellite dish, internet into the community, and that connectivity is direct to a satellite, puts us straight into the World Wide Web. And so you don't have these cable breaks and fiber breaks and fiber theft and vandalism that plagues everybody else in Jamaica. So we were able to do those 100 schools. The kids were excited, the teachers were excited, but of course the community then becomes excited, which is good and bad. So the good is that we were able to get internet into that community, and the community now comes to use the internet at the schools. But now the bad of it is, of course, the principals start to complain because of the encroachment of the community on the school, because it's really the main source of internet in that community. So what we've started to do, and as Mike alluded to, is to extend that internet, having injected it into that school and into that community. Now extend that internet into the wider community using both Wi-Fi and microwave into individual homes. So we're able to extend that, and we're doing several trials now in some of these remote communities, and we're quite pleased with how it is going. So what I would say is a couple of things. You know, there are lots of fiber plans that have taken place, and are taking place, and so on, to roll out fiber. I think that's fantastic. It's great. But in all communities, in all societies, we'll never be able to roll out fiber as quickly as we can deliver internet with satellite into these rural communities. Secondly, some communities are simply not going to be well served by fiber. Just the remote location of some of these places, we'll be able to maintain it. You know, these are places where it's difficult to drive to or walk to, much less to try and maintain a fiber network into these communities. And third, you know, there's something called hurricane season in the Caribbean. We've just seen the recent example of Togo. We're looking at, a couple of years ago, Dorian hit the Bahamas. And what takes place is when that hurricane comes through, connectivity for these countries is quickly reestablished using satellite. So what I would say is that every government needs to have within their plans, even if it's just for contingency, a certain level of satellite capacity. Fine, roll out your massive fiber plans and get everybody connected. But satellite definitely has a place in there. And we in the Caribbean need to ensure that sufficient capacity is retained for the Caribbean, for our use, just in the eventuality of these kinds of disasters.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that comprehensive, practical, seeing the rollout of satellite with ReadyNet in Jamaica. Are you coming back in, Michael?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. So it's back to you. No?
We'll now move on to.
I thought he was coming on the back end of Chris because.
Okay.
Dr. Myers-Hamilton is next.
Yes, speak next. Yes.
All right. So Dr. Myers-Hamilton will be next. Dr. Myers.
Yes. Good morning to everyone, and thank you so much. It is really a deep honor and pleasure to be part of this discussion. And I'd like to say, commendation is in order for Viasat and ReadyNet, because they did a remarkable job on the ground at the time it was needed. And what this pandemic taught us, and I'm going to even start before the pandemic, because WRC 19, the World Radio Conference that took place in 2019 in November to December, really brought home to the persons that were there. And I do believe CTU delegations were there, representations. And we saw that transition taking place. Yes, you had the international mobile telecommunications taking up a chunk of the spectrum, but what we saw emerging was actually satellite services and high altitude services as well. And Chris is absolutely right. Putting up a satellite in Mullet Hall, I mean, when I look at the picture that is on screen, I remember that day. We literally rushed down to our meeting and I said to my team, this is history in the making. Even before the pandemic, or this picture is in 2019, prior to the whole, episode of COVID-19. So what happened was that we had to now kickstart and mobilize what we had in the pipeline, which was really pricing strategies that had to change. because a number of our laws, as Chris alluded to, are hard-coded. So we had to work with joint of government under the Ministry of Science and Education through my minister, who also was very, very close to this matter and very passionate about it, as well as Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. We had joined up government, we had meetings, collaborations. I actually served on the National Education Sector Committee, even though I'm a regulator, to try and resolve this issue that, the gap that was there between, the underserved, the unserved, and even children who did not even have the technology in their hands, even though they had access to technology. So it was quite a bit of learning, and we did it. And there are a number of documentations that show a degree of success, because we're back face to face. And in some instances, like in my daughter's case, she'd never really missed a day of school, which is something I think is remarkable, being, having a pandemic in the midst. Some persons, however, have been left behind. And this is something that government, we have to fix. We have to catch up, and we have to put things in place. Making the points that Mike made are very valid. We have to look at education in a very holistic way, and even have a pricing strategy possibly that goes over different services where you have market segmentation. So again, I do believe there are many lessons learned, and the regulator is there to stand by, not only to guard the effective use of spectrum, but also to ensure that there is equity for all. So thank you once again for that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Myers. And okay, so Trevor, this is the point at which I ask that we can have some interaction.
There have been some questions coming into us. I was wondering, though, first, if Mike had posed certain questions about getting additional spectrum. I was wondering if Dr. Myers-Hamilton would like to say what is happening in terms of Jamaica as regards the questions he posed.
So that's a very good question. And from time to time, what we're looking at, a lot is happening right now in the space. We have digital switchover taking place on the television side. So we have actually agreed on a standard, ATSC 3.0, and we're moving very closely in. We actually started a pilot this year. So a number of broadcasters are actually going to be moving out of the existing space into a new set of frequencies and broadcasting digital TV. Because again, I know Chris is very passionate about this, because he's right. We made a comment, not here, but prior to this, that television, I think you're on TV yesterday, Christopher, where you mentioned that a TV set is in everybody's home. So one of the things is, TV is going to be an integral part of reaching children, reaching persons. That's one thing. So in terms of spectrum availability, we're looking and seeing how best to allocate, because coming on the heels now of the CES show, that was just mind-blowing. 2 weeks ago, we saw where the technology is going. And for example, we have to look back at the 6 gigahertz in a very big way, because it's expanding beyond the Internet of Things. And I mean, we in Jamaica actually charge right now for a portion of that band, but we have to really revisit. That's one thing we'll be revisiting. And again, maybe seeking counsel through consultations to see how best we can reallocate certain spectrum and come up with better pricing mechanisms. So that is also in trade. Because again, as the regulator has learned, we have to be dynamic in our approach. We cannot be static. Gone are those days.
Great, thank you very much. And I liked Mike's comment earlier on, where he talked about really competition driving basically prices down, making everything much more affordable for everyone. And I think that is a very useful thing, and I think regulators should pay very much attention to that, because the name of the game is really access for everyone. One other thing I'd like to ask Mike before I go into some of the questions on the Q&A here is, once we have the schools connected via satellite, And what obviously ReadyNet has done a tremendous job putting these 100 sites onto into giving connectivity. But what else can such connectivity enable, both in the schools and also in local communities?
Very, very good question. The things that we are focusing on, because we think they're transformational for communities, in addition to education, are telehealth, which I mentioned, also precision agriculture, making sure in agricultural areas which tend to be rural, that proper information is provided to the workers and the farmers, as well as being able to complete the entire ecosystem for agriculture, which connectivity requires. There's also the Internet of Things, of course, that's coming along in agriculture that will be increasingly important. So we've looked at education, healthcare, and education, which tend to be the three areas that consume the largest portions of national budgets: food, healthcare, and education. They all three dwarf security and military in most countries in the world. But there are a number of other applications as well that that follow. But those are the ones that we're actually focusing on and are experimenting with in a number of countries. Let me just say something about this enhanced telehealth. Many of us during the pandemic did use telehealth, which was primarily an audio-video interaction with a healthcare professional. But what we're actually doing is enhancing that by putting in a very inexpensive small suitcase all of the medical devices that you would normally see in a doctor's office. And with the connectivity, we're getting all of that information, that diagnostic information and vital sign information, back to the healthcare professional in the interaction prior and during the interaction. So you're actually getting a physician's office experience through this enhanced telehealth. And of course, connectivity is required. But as I like to say, the actual cost of connecting that telehealth is far less than $1.
Great, powerful stuff. I have a question here for, I think it would be yourself, Mike. Coming from Bennett Thomas, one of the friends of the CTU, from Dominica. He says that you made a great point about educational content caching and zero rating of sites. But he says, however, isn't this an issue for governments to facilitate with both the regulated and the ISPs? Telehealth, he says, requires both equipment procurement and funding. How can the private sector assist us?
In the private sector and the public sector, I think, need to join here. We are actually experimenting with connectivity and telehealth in a state in Mexico, where the state is providing, for example, the physicians and the healthcare professionals, and are funding that part of the overall interaction. They have talked about buying the equipment, putting it into the local community and some of the schools. So I think there are national and regional governments that are willing to employ these technologies and fund these technologies. The private sector, of course, has a lot of educational content that can be provided. We've had discussions with a number of the world's largest repositories of content, and they seem very anxious to help us get content to these communities and to these students. Of course, nations, the ministries of education also have access to huge amounts of wonderful content that can actually align with the educational curriculum. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for private partnerships, public-private partnerships, and then there are all the NGSOs that are getting involved, as well as some of the interregional development banks.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And just one final question, I think, for this segment. Chris Peru asks, and I presume he is from Jamaica. He says the Universal Service Fund and eLearning Jamaica have been charged with funding and implementing internet access in Jamaica for nearly 20 years. Yet less than 30% of government schools are internet connected. This is really a question for the Spectrum Management Authority, but also perhaps ReadyNet. He wants to know, what is the Spectrum Management Authority and ReadyNet working with them? How are they working with them to address this gap? So I think, Mike, this is a question for Dr. Myers Hamilton, perhaps, to address.
Yeah. And Trevor, I'm going to take this one because it's a bit of a challenge, and it goes beyond just connectivity. It is really shifting a behavior, because when we talk about a blended modality and learning online, remember now, the pandemic was a push factor that pushed and forced persons to go online. There has been quite a bit of resistance to teaching and learning online prior to COVID-19. So one of the benefits I see, personally speaking, is that it enforced persons to now create relevant digital content. Now, let me address that question that you have put to Mike as well about caching, because again, I served quite a little time in the Ministry of Education. Now, when we talk about a blended modality, with online learning, it's not always streaming. You have passive and active learning sessions. So content can be actually sent prior to a class and on a server sitting in a community somewhere, and they access it on the server and the speed at which there is no caching. So that's one thing. Then again, it's more a collaborative approach where you use exploratory learning techniques. The teacher is now a facilitator of the classroom rather than the child or the learner being a passive person. So there are many ways. Now, e-learning, as you rightly said, started it, and they did quite well. But where they started was at the secondary rather than the primary or the tertiary. And there was a reason for that too, Trevor. It came out of statistics where we're doing very badly as a nation, Jamaica. So e-learning was charged in putting digital content as supplemental information for the high school students who were sitting CSEC. So there's history behind that. And then over time, it was going to be a phase starting with the basic schools and primary schools, and then tertiary did their thing, because again, UE and UTEC, two of the larger institutions in Jamaica, have an online presence. And it's again a blended modality. So it's just, and in terms of paying for it, again, the Universal Access Fund had at funding and actually funded a number of access points for schools. And again, we had public-private partnerships in that space as well. But again, there's history. COVID just forced the issue to come forward. And that's my humble opinion.
I must admit, I agree with that. I feel that we're all seeing, well, COVID is terrible, but it has created a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely.
It really has. Just one quick question before I get wrapped on the knuckles.
No, not at all, not at all.
This one is from a presenter this afternoon, and he asks, how can the Jamaica Viasat project leverage the Giga project resources to accelerate penetration in rural Jamaica? Maybe Mr. Daring would like to answer that question, or Mike.
Sorry, the question was how can
the Jamaica Viasat project leverage the Giga project resources to accelerate penetration in rural Jamaica?
Sure. So we are actually participating right now in a government tender. Having introduced the idea of utilizing satellite to quickly move into unserved areas, we're actually participating in a massive tender at the moment to do a number of more schools. And from those schools have simply become the hub of internet connectivity in those regions. The beauty about satellite connectivity is that even if you have massive fiber plants, it's going to take many years to roll out fiber. And satellite is what you call movable capacity. So I have a dish here today at one school. I can have it tomorrow at another school if that school ever gets fiber connectivity. And so you have this, I guess I call it mobile capacity that's moving around the country, plugging gaps until you can get whatever else types of connectivity might come along in that area that you might find more competitive or better performing, etc. So we certainly feel that there's a significant amount of coverage in Jamaica that it's ideally suited for satellite capacity. You know, and whether that's, you know, 30, 20%, I don't know. But I certainly believe that there's a significant gap that will always be there simply because of the flexibility of satellite capacity. So, you know, hopefully we can start rolling out even more sites, having injected internet into those communities, like we've done one up in Dresiki, St. Mary. I mean, these are little communities that many people have not even heard of in Jamaica. But, you know, communities like Dresiki, where we injected satellite internet into Mount Angus Primary School, and from that school we're now into the community where we serve with a Wi-Fi access point in the community square. We've also now started to extend from that square into individual houses and so on. So, you know, it is something that is growing, and nothing can grow it as fast as satellite.
Thank you very much, Chris, as the last contributor there. Very good seeing you. The last time I think I saw you in Trinidad was at Super Blues comeback in the stadium, and you don't look a day older.
That was a wonderful night. I long for the days when Carnival returns.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much to all three of you, Michael Lubin, Chris Daring, and Dr. Myers Hamilton, who I think really sort of crystallized something where she brought that experience of working in education with and blending, to use the term, with her role at Spectrum Management, and raised some very key things. And I think that this is a game changer. This is just Citizen Joe saying this in terms of the Caribbean. I think that this is a game changer. Thank you all so much. And we continue to encourage those of you who want to participate more with the speakers to please do so on the Hublo platform, and also to even, if you will, participate in the poll that helps to gauge the kind of interest and feedback that's required by the CTU and its partners and presenters and people actually doing the heavy lifting in the digital space. Thank you again so much from Jamaica, and Michael is in the US, yeah? Okay. Next up, we have Akhenaton Laborde, who is the executive director of RACSTIV, who is one of the sponsors of this forum. And Akhenaton has been waiting in the wings, and he's going to do a presentation. He's going to speak on Yalacation. I hope I have the pronunciation correct. This is about a social educational experience. So Akhenaton, you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Great, great. Good to see you, and the floor is yours.
All right. So my name is Akhenaton Laborde. I'm a technologist, the CEO of RACSTIV. And when COVID, when the pandemic hit, right? Trinidad, we was getting up to speed with digital education, and we're getting there. And what it is, I end up realizing with what's going on in schools is you have online burnout with kids. And you have kids where they're in the classroom, but they're also gaming at the side. And I decided to, I said, you know what, let's use our virtual platform and create a solution where, because right now kids, they're not able to go out on events, they're not able to go on school tours and all these different things. And that's a serious issue with kids right now because they're kind of lashing out at it. And that's why it is they're probably at the side doing gaming and they're doing all kinds of different things that they're not supposed to be doing. So we came outside and said, okay, we have been working on this virtual platform. Let's convert it into an educational platform. So I'm going to give you a demonstration on what the platform is. So let me share my screen. So we have Yalacation, and basically it's a online learning resource, right? And it's basic like any other LMS platform. We have all kinds of different courses you could go to, right? So let's just do a demo course, right? You could see all the different topics and lessons and the how much steps you finish to finish that particular subject. So I could go to the course material. I could go on it on YouTube. I could download it. I could go to the lesson. So let's say I click on this lesson here. I could watch the video, and then I could go through the information, but then we could go straight to the topic. And we could go through the whole topic, and then we could do the quiz. All right, so I'm just walking it through, all right? And we could come here and we could do the final quiz. We start the quiz, and we could go through everything. But this is something that everyone basically could do, any LMS could do. And what we basically added into it is bringing the virtual aspect into it. So here it is, I'm able to go to the lesson, and I could watch a video about arts and crafts. Now we have different subjects that we're using for the virtual. So this first lesson in arts and craft is creating a picture board. So here it is, I'm actually in a virtual classroom, and with our phrase, we're going to call it immersive, because since the start of COVID, the word virtual has been thrown around a lot with what is not really virtual. So we just basically start saying our technologies are immersive virtual experience. So here it is, I have the teacher, and she's going to basically teach you how to create a picture board. So I could click on the teacher, and she's going to start. So let me I want to pause from here, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it right to the full screen here. All right, so I click on the teacher.
Hi, and welcome to Viasat, a virtual educational platform where students can be immersed into a creative learning experience.
And what she's going to do is she's going to walk you through all the different items you're going to use to make this picture board. And so today we're making the Scarlet Ibis. So I'm just going through it.
And we wanted to look as realistic as we can.
So this teaching material, this could be either live or this could be pre-recorded and uploaded into the server. Now, at the end of the course, right? So for arts and craft, she basically teaches you how to build a picture board with a Scarlet Ibis. Now, the tour guide part of it is now we're actually going to take them to the Carney Bird Sanctuary. So, but before we do that, within the classroom, you have a lot of different gamifications. So if it is, you look up in this corner here, you could see 4 hidden items. So I could probably look around the classroom for different things that will match to the course that's going on. So if it is, I click on the image.
So now we're here at the Lemons Harry Swamp. So we're going to take it off. So let's get into the board and let's check it out. So we are near at the Scarlet Ibis nest. Everything's a bit so quiet and so really and no drizzle, and that's okay. We enjoy it.
So I'm just going to go through a little bit.
Buses flying here. They fly over 100 times per hour. They come to the level. Right. So all are coming and they stand up.
All right. So by going through these 2 videos now, you would have got information to go through the trivias in the virtual space. So now I'm able to walk around and I click here. This has a trivia. What is the bird found on the $50 bill, right? And if it is, by going through the video, you would have realized that it was talking about the red cap scarlet. So I click that, it's correct. So I now close this and I'm able to walk through the experience. I could walk to the rest of the classroom, right? I could click here to have another one. What do the Scarlet Ibis feed on to get their red color? Red cherries, crabs, snails, red snapper, right? Crabs would be the correct answer. And then I'm able to move on. So as you see, while I'm going through the experience, right, you're seeing the hidden numbers rising, right? So it's basically telling me to have another 1. So if it is I click, I know which one it is, it will then tell me 4, right? So, and you could load digital trivias and digital tokens throughout the experience. Now, because this subject was on the Scarlet Ibis, we are now going down to the Carney Bird Sanctuary, and I could go to the boat, right? So here it is, I'm in the virtual space, right? I could click on photos, right? So that's just a close-up of that area there. I could click on the photo album, and here it is. I could go through a lot of different images that basically was done in the Carney Bird Sanctuary, right? So I'm just going to close this here now, right? So now on the site itself, the presentation I was showing you before, I took out the time, but on the platform itself, we are able to set times, we're able to get your score, and at the end of the class, you're able to now have that score go into the LMS platform. So now you have where you can award points to students, right? Prize given, right? And one of the cool things with the arts and craft is, let me just stop sharing, is that after at the end, let's say at the end of the term, all the different arts and stuff and everything, we are able to give students who had the most amount of points, we could actually send it over to them, right? So what it is we are getting with the platform is that, yes, you have students that they're doing stuff at the side, you know, and we're basically saying, okay, let's use that to our advantage, right? And then what basically happens is after school, when they get off at school, because I have seen some schools, they get off at 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock, right? You have these situations where you may not have a parent at home. Now, this is actually a cool experience that kids after school, they could sit down and they could go to a tour. So this becomes not a babysitter, but it could help, you know, and we are willing to work with the different ministries, and we could build this platform to suit the different subjects. And as it is right now, what we have been developing is for arts and crafts. For chemistry, you have a lot of schools that don't have a chemistry lab. We could create a virtual chemistry lab and have the teacher embedded into it, and you could do your same chemistry stuff inside of the lab, the bio lab also. So we're doing art, chemistry, bio, social studies, history. The platform is very cool for history, right? If it is, now, like I said, we built out this platform with all the different virtual sites we were doing, right? And this is one of the platforms we did just before COVID, and it really grew with COVID. So you have all these different locations in virtual, right? So let's say if it is, we go to Pigeon, in fact, no, let's go history one, Fort Abercrombie. So if it is, I go to Fort Abercrombie, you're gonna have information on Fort Abercrombie, and you're not on, right? So you're going to have information for Fort Abercrombie, which it is, we could put it in a history type subject. We also have geography, and geography would work with different locations around your country. And yesterday, we were speaking to a representative of the Ministry of Youth and Development, and they actually saw the platform and was very much interested in sitting down and talking about bringing agriculture into it. So we actually now putting things in place to put agriculture where it is, you could simulate the hydroponic farms and all those different things. And this is just a cool way of, you know, having students who can't go out, because even with schools kind of getting back to some normalcy, they're still not going to allow students to go on field trips. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And with a platform like this, you could address that. So when it is you listen to what Google and Viasat and all of what everyone is doing, that is really cool. We need all of that. But I think we still need to remember that we have kids and they are being burnt out. They want to talk to their friends. They want to go outside and experience stuff. And this would be a good solution that we could, I mean, you could go into any country and just create all their historical points, and then we could create it into the platform. So this could be a platform for Trinidad, it could be a platform for Jamaica, Barbados, whatever, but this is it. So I'll stop right there, it's about full, and I'll take questions.
First of all, let me get the correct pronunciation. Is Akhenaton the correct pronunciation?
That's doable, but just
So tell me how you pronounce your name.
so the Egyptian pharaoh is Akhenaten.
Sorry?
Akhenaten.
Akhenaten. Okay, Akhenaten. Okay, and I'm not going to take the blame for that because somebody said to me, wink, wink, that I had the pronunciation correct, Akhenaten. I mean, if I could have stood up and given you a standing ovation, I would. Well, I could, but then I would upset the whole thing in the room here. That was so brilliant, so refreshing, and I think very, very inspiring in terms of innovation taking place, in terms of a technological solution in a way in which it's not just talking the heavier lifting stuff, but still being able to move the needle. I think it was really, really fantastic. And Akhenaten, I mean, 1,000,001 questions come, like, in terms of your team to develop original content, or possibly working with other partners because you're going to have intellectual property issues dealing with content. So, I'm sure that those are things that you're thinking about, but you've really taken the leap of faith to build this platform. I mean, and I just really wanted to posit that. I mean, I wish I was 14 years old, but, I would be interested in using it to sort of have an experience, But seriously, someone shot me a very quick message here, very excited about what they saw. And it was about the content side of things, how you're dealing with that, because all of these things take money, of course.
Right. So basically, we want to make it accessible and we want to make it, reasonable for, because it's education, right? So how we are mapping it, how we are doing our business with it is, we're not going to charge you for the use of the platform. We're just going to charge you for creating content. So this is just my way of giving back. So if it is, let's say, for arts and craft, for the semester, you want 20 different courses, we would just charge you for creating those 20 courses. You want 20 biology, we charge you just for the 20 biology. You do not need to worry about the cost of the creation of the platform. Now, we know in Trinidad, iGovTT, they're using SharePoint. So we will be able to integrate with different countries, whatever they're using, right? When it comes to the intellectual property, whatever country brings us over and we create that content is theirs, right? So all that content is going to be owned by that particular government, that particular agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, as you say, it sort of is, well, it is like an LMS, and you'll have an e-commerce dimension of it, or the business model is that people will work with you to get content up, basically, and for you to distribute and to provide the environment for that content to be curated. And okay, great.
So we had a question on the platform from Taylor. She's asking, and I think you sort of answered in your discussion right then. She asked what kind of financial investment will a school need in this platform? But from what I heard you say, it's not really, you're not going to be dealing directly with schools, or like with the ministries of education, and then they would obviously provide.
Just say that over because they kind of coming through.
Sorry, what kind of financial investment would a school need for this platform? So
okay, so well, just to basically talk, if we're talking figures, I mean, we're going to work with the schools, right? And let me give you the business model first. So most times, whenever it says I'm doing anything in business, I always go with the whole ideology of doing it myself. So basically what it is I was going to do with this platform was create all the different subjects, I have different friends that are doing teachings and stuff and everything. So we're coming together because we're actually building this right now, right? We're coming together, we're going to create all the subjects, everything, and then we're going to charge a subscription fee. So it becomes a situation where anyone could use it, right? And then from there, if the government basically wanted, then we could get and we could start to talk to government. And then from there, if private institutions wanted to build something that is specific to their curriculum, then we come outside and build something for them. It might probably be a situation where creating each subject might be in US, might probably be about 1,500 US. But it still depends on what that particular subject is going to be. right? But we are making it very accommodating. We're not going to charge what we would charge on a big corporate virtual platform with my different clients, but it's education. So we're going to bring the price right down to the bare minimum. But it's discussions we could have with different individuals.
I wanted to caution you and say that, that this is not the time and place for the business discussion, but certainly.
I thought that's what they were asking.
Yeah, correct. And because, so anyone can contact in terms of getting more information on the allocation. I want to say so much how really impressed we all are in the room here. Thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of take-up, and congrats on it as well.
Yes, and there are more questions which will be posed, but yeah, we will try and get you to.
And I think it'll be in the platform as well, because I'm sure it'll be in the Google platform.
Yeah,
you could pop in there if you haven't been in there and see some of the questions that are being directed to you.
Okay, yeah. So I will actually go and answer everyone's question as soon as my session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Really, that was like a real Dr. Cassandra moment, a good injection in the midsection, seeing the innovation.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you so much. 10:45, we're just about, we're kind of moving on time as we move into theme 4, which is Sociocultural Considerations. And speaking of the mental health impact of online learning, and we'd like to invite now Alicia Hoyt to join us in the session. Alicia, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, beautiful. I hope I've joined correctly. Am I free to go ahead at this point?
You most certainly are.
Thank you. So I will look to share my screen. Coming on after Dr. Cassandra moment, I hope I can be equal to the task. Here we are. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I want to thank the presenters and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for this forum. It's really a lovely opportunity. So I've been introduced as a clinical psychologist based in Trinidad and Tobago, but what I feel is of equal importance is the fact that I'm a mother of 5 and a survivor of parenting online during a pandemic. I consider that to be quite a trophy to carry. What we want to share about today is, again, some definitions of the terms that we're going to be using. What is mental health and how we understand online learning, and basically some recommendations about going forward for the mental health and well-being of our learners and our parents and our educators. I'm going to share just one story because my kids are from primary school all the way to tertiary. And we've survived the secondary entrance examination. We've survived CSEC and CAPE during this point in time. And it's been quite a journey having everyone at home. I want to really commend to parents and the teachers and the educators who have really rallied and jumped forward to make this possible at this point in time during this pandemic. It's really been quite a feat and quite an accomplishment. I remember boasting to a friend of mine how happy I was to have all my children home, learning at home and seeming to get everything that they need without needing to leave the house. Fear of COVID and not wanting to go back to the driving up and down. And after I boasted to my children, to my friend, how good things were, my daughter turned around and looked at me. She said, well, that's good for you, but I want to go back to school. And it really was that simple for them. They simply want to return to school. And so what we're going to look at is what the issue is for our children with this online learning. By way of definition, we think of mental health as having a mental illness or not having a mental illness. And the World Health Organization has defined it more broadly than that, in that mental health refers to a state of well-being in which a person can realize their potential and their abilities, be able to cope with normal life stress, and contribute meaningfully to their community. And so mental health really is the presence of emotional, psychological, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or mental illness. And that's a fundamental difference to hold on to. When we look at what our children and our adolescents, our learners, need for their well-being, am I coming across clearly?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right. So the 40 developmental assets framework was some work done by the Search Institute in the US. And what they looked at is, what do our children need in order to thrive and prosper? What do they need for their well-being? And they came up with basically some external assets or things that our children need in their environment, as well as internal assets, things that the children need to have within themselves. And of course, first and foremost, as we would know and expect, is a caring and supportive family and school environment and neighborhood as well. If our children have a supportive and caring environment, their emotional needs are met and they're able to focus in the classroom. Boundaries and expectations, our children need supervision and limits, as well as high expectations and encouragement to pursue being their very best. And creative and good use of their time. They need time for creativity, time for outdoors. They need time to play, as well as time for religious experiences is also identified as one of the needs that our children may have, and to be seen as valuable within their community. That's their environment. What do they need internally? A commitment to learning, being motivated to want to learn and achieve, being engaged in their learning, a bonding or a sense of connection to school and to their school environment. They benefit from having life skills such as being able to problem solve, make decisions for themselves, practice a sense of agency and autonomy. And of course, children need a sense of purpose and hope and personal power. These are some of the key elements that they would need to be able to thrive in the world and to learn best. Does online learning offer that? When we look first at the definition of online learning, very simply, it's education that takes place over the internet and not in the traditional classroom. And well designed and well put together, it can offer its users a sense of autonomy. And users here is not just the students, but the educators as well. It can offer flexibility. I asked my daughters how they feel with their online learning, and they said they feel more organized. They appreciate the to-do lists, the checklists, the notices that they can see and record, the printed notes, the use of audiovisual material. So it offers students and educators a wider variety of educational resources. And that boosts and give the children what we just pointed out that they need for learning and for thriving, a sense of independence and motivated to learn. And coming after Mr. Laborde's presentation, that really excited me, because the Caroni Swamp in particular is something we would enjoy having fun with online. But in talking with students and with doing research, as good as an online learning experience can be when well crafted, children still need that social connection of the school environment. They still need, and not just want, but need the context that is important for learning. And in this present environment where online learning has been pushed to the fore because of the global pandemic, more so, online learning can feel like a lesser alternative or a temporary stopgap measure compared to face-to-face learning. So the premise I'm presenting today is that online learning in response to a global pandemic is actually emergency remote learning. And it's not fair, really, to consider the value of online learning in this present context. The other point that is key to make that came out also in the UNICEF's report called Lasting Impact, that came out of Jamaica, is that it is the most vulnerable children who are the greatest risk of poor mental health, further economic disadvantage, abuse and neglect, and more negative outcomes overall. So what we are having is that the divide between the haves and the have-nots, if you want to put it that crassly, is increasing. What are some of the 4 areas of impact? Well, I know persons spoke with regards to how learning has been disrupted by socioeconomic factors. Other presenters spoke on the inequity of access and the poor physical environment at home, whether it's not space or not having privacy or too much noise where a child cannot learn in their home environment. I want to focus on the second aspect, which is that poor parental supervision, because learning has been pushed into the home with its emerging emergency remote learning. And parents have been pushed to default as teachers, ill-equipped and ill-prepared and burdened with all the other effects and impacts of this pandemic. And so parents are dealing with poor mental health, which may not extend to full psychiatric illness, but at least with the grief and the stress and the anxiety of managing a family and managing a child online with limited technological skill and resources. Parents are unable to supervise their kids because they have to supervise younger ones. And again, my heart goes out to parents who are teachers and who have their own children at home to supervise while they are trying to teach their class and doing so valiantly. And to the adults and the caregivers who are under a burden with work stress. Either you have to leave to go to work, wondering what's happening to your kids at home with grandmother or neighbor or big sister. Even if you're working from home, as I've been, it's piling your work on top of attending to the children, on top of attending to the house, or it's dealing with unemployment, all of which leave the caregivers and the adults unable to give our children what they need. And we all know that parental involvement is key to student and academic success. Another area of impact that I also know will be handled after me is the children's exposure to online dangers, and the top 5 dangers we have highlighted here. Because parents are overwhelmed and caregivers are unavailable, our children have to be online for class. We can't always tell what they're actually doing online, and they can move very smoothly from class to after class. Thank you for Mr. Laborde for offering fun educational alternatives for after school. But too many of our kids are getting lost, meeting people online, looking for that social connection, being exposed to inappropriate content, not just sexual, but inappropriate ideologically as well, and too violent for some ages, oversharing their personal information, again, because they're looking for that social connection and missing their friends, and maybe giving out more information than they should. Cyberbullying, which is like schoolyard bullying on steroids because it doesn't go away, you don't get away from it, and the risk of addictions and exposure to compulsive behaviors. Developmentally, we have children who have not seen the school environment. Our preschoolers, our first year students, 2 years have gone, and children who have started school haven't seen school. And that's a real issue. That's a real issue. And we have colleagues who are concerned about the underdevelopment of our young ones, some of whom are starting to look as if they're developmentally delayed. And we don't know at this point if that can be recovered, if it's a temporary loss, or if it's going to be permanent the longer that this pandemic goes on and our children are out of schools. For our Form 1s who've transitioned from primary into secondary, they haven't seen their classmates, or they've seen them to a limited extent. For a lot of our young ones, there's a loss of interest in socializing at home. The downside of online learning is that it's too much screen time, if you could ever think of a teenager complaining of that. And there's disinterest sometimes or overwhelm with that online learning. And so we have concerns about the developmental gaps that are coming up for our children. The emotional and psychological distress, I think, is most obvious. A colleague of mine, I couldn't put her name because I didn't get a chance to interview her, has quoted in a letter that's going around locally, is that clinicians are seeing severe anxiety, addiction to games, exposure to porn, somatic complaints, depressive moods, anger and irritation, hyperactivity in primary school students. And we're getting more and more cases coming into us with children who have these different needs and these different emotional crises. What can be done? 3 priorities I've listed at the top. I wanted to put a 4th. If there's any benefit that's come out of online learning coming to the fore in this pandemic, it's that mental health is now on the table. It's now a central and core issue and not a side issue anymore. And for that, we're grateful, as sad as that sounds. What can be done? Access to mental health support and psychosocial support can and should be built in onto the online platforms so that there's ready. And one of the presenters spoke about telehealth, referring more so, it seemed, to medicine. But telehealth can also refer to access to mental health counselors for especially the children in the rural or the underserved areas. Equipping educators to be able to teach emotion regulation and social emotional skills to their students. Teach our teachers how to help their students and how to help themselves. The third point, and I hear it all through everyone else's presentations, is that you've been listening to your users, your students, your parents, your educators, and your administrators. Maybe I should put ourselves on that list, the mental health professionals. Listen to your users as to how you can help and bring equity into the system. What is needed right now is to go beyond corporate social responsibility into collaborating with agencies, NGOs, faith-based organizations, governments to boost and support vulnerable children and vulnerable families. The families of children with special needs, the children who are in care homes and institutions within their countries, the children who are in socioeconomically deprived neighborhoods. Work with other agencies to support these families in real time. Parents want to help, but they don't know how. Maybe we can empower and educate parents in ICT so they can be part of the process. Well-designed ICT in education, well-designed online learning, I think as the other presenters have already shown, boosts a child's sense of well-being by providing flexibility and competence and a sense of control. So I'm confident that that will be done in how we design what is available to our children. But we need to facilitate the safe return to in-person classes. Online learning cannot replace in-person teaching, cannot replace our teachers. And so I would like to encourage those involved in telecommunications to support the in-person experience and add to its effectiveness for our children and for our learners, and give us hope for the future by giving children and educators opportunities for scholarship, for developing local content, like the speaker before me, for the children being innovative in their own learning, creating internships where children who excel maybe in ICT can go on into careers and into further study. Our children need hope because the environment has seemed very hopeless. And so, remarkably, as I look at my clock, I seem to be on time with completing my presentation. I hope I didn't go through too quickly, but those are the main areas. It's unfair to link, to look at online learning in the context, I think, of the global pandemic, when the potential and the value and the power of ICT in education is so much more. I thank you very much for your time, and I think we have a question and answer session now with Ms. Leonard.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and you can call me Josanne, and fear not about the Dr. Cassandra moment. I think, I mean, my niece would say my skin was growing all during your presentation, because I think it infused all of this talk about technology, online learning, digital equity and equity with what should be at the center of it, which is the human condition. And I mean, it was a remarkable presentation. I'm not yet seeing any questions. I think you've probably stumped a lot of people with having to think.
Sorry.
No, well, in a good way. But certainly I would say that this, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking that the team that designed
yeah, I was hearing Alicia, but this one.
Okay, so we're getting a bit of feedback from one of our, from Trevor, who just exited the stage. But I was saying that the team here at the CTU, however they came about balancing this forum, this was really, really a brilliant presentation, and I think one that needs to go beyond this particular session this morning. And it really needs to be seen by teachers, by corporate Trinidad and Tobago. It really was a fabulous presentation, and one that I'm definitely advocating, and for you to present it. So I know it's all being recorded. So I don't really have any questions. So with the little minute or so that we may have, is there anything that you felt that you wanted to reinforce in sort of wrapping your session?
I think we need to look at supporting families. Everything I've listened, I came on a little earlier than I expected to, and heard many of the presentations on what is coming for ICT in education. Sounds amazing, really, really exciting and innovative. My great concern is the gap between those who have access to what is possible and coming down the pipelines and those who don't. And we're going to suffer grave consequences unless we reach the children and the families who do not have the same kind of access to the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline. And so that's why I said it may take going beyond typical corporate social responsibility to really finding innovative ways to address the needs of our families that are struggling so that everyone has access.
You know, Alicia, as we wrap your session, even some of the big thinkers in the management sphere like McKinsey and the rest have been really sort of not just hinting, but people have been positing thought leadership on these issues of the fact that we're dealing with maybe the economic, the technological, but we haven't really focused on what is coming down the pipeline.
Yes.
What is coming down the pipeline. So my question to you would be, you've alluded to it, you've talked about it's no longer CSR. Is it that there may be an initiative or maybe a galvanizing from maybe an association like the clinical psychologists, whatever it is, that can advance the advocacy for putting this in the mix in terms of going forward? Because we really have to be future focusing, not just on economics and continuing, but really the very human dimension, the many variables that we have probably not even yet contemplated.
Yes, there would definitely be roles for multidisciplinary teams, and there is a place. I'm advocating on behalf of, I guess, all mental health professionals, all helping professionals, really, social workers down the pipeline as well, for a seat at the table in deciding how we go forward with education. What we need to understand, recent research has found that many of the social ills that we see, whether it's substance use, whether it's psychiatric illness, whatever it is we're seeing in society, criminality and so on, often comes from early childhood experiences that have been very negative. And so going forward is not simply about what access we make available, but addressing the trauma that our children have experienced through this pandemic, because it's not going to go away unless we address it, and the learning losses that our children have experienced on top of that. And so it's going to take real integration, and no one professional group or party holds the answer. There will have to be greater collaboration in terms of how do we go back and cover the losses that we've had. Some people are saying when it was 1 year into the pandemic, they said we had 2 years of learning loss. Now that we're 2 years and I'm hearing 5 and 10 years of learning loss that we have to recoup. So there is a need for a place at the table for helping professionals and mental health professionals, along with educators who've done an amazing job to make sure everybody moves forward.
Thank you so much. And I think the first place at the table has been triggered by the Caribbean Telecommunications Unit. I think it's really very insightful that this particular focus was placed in terms of being able to cover the spectrum, to use.
Kudos to them, yes.
No pun intended on the word spectrum, but yes, the spectrum of what needs to be tackled. Thank you so much. And I'm certainly going to reach out to you because I'm very, very interested in this particular dimension of what you brought to the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josanne. It's exciting to talk to you. I've seen you all these years on TV and radio, so it's been a pleasure.
Now you're dating me, but okay. All right.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
No, that's okay. All right. So that was Alicia Hoyt, clinical psychologist, Trinidad and Tobago, and we've had a bit of a shift change, Junior. But Trevor made sure that his presence was continue to be felt in the room by sort of we had some mic open and we heard him sort of intervene.
Certainly heard his voice.
Certainly heard his voice. I'm joined by Junior McIntyre, who is here at the CTU, and he's going to be moderating the next session, which is Child Online Protection, Northgate College EduFlex, Considerations and Lessons Learned, and the Impact of Online Education, a Parent's Perspective. So it's yours, Junior.
Thank you very much, Josanne. And the previous presentation is really an excellent segue into this session that is dealing with the whole issue of the psycho or social cultural issues that we have to face as we move forward in this new dispensation. I have a slide up on screen there, and most everybody should be able to see it. And it speaks to the impact of COVID-19 on education in Caribbean small island developing states. And it's a study that would have been completed by UNESCO. And it gives us a picture, a sense of the scale and the complexity of the issues that we are really dealing with, and the problems and the challenges that we are coping with. You can see from the slide that we have an estimate of over 91,000 teachers and 1.3 million learners in the Caribbean that have been affected by COVID-19 as compared to 1.5 billion learners globally. And those figures are fairly conservative figures. And we know the impact of COVID is much larger than that and much more profound and deeper. So today we're going to talk a bit about that. So we're going to be speaking with teachers, educators. We're going to be speaking with somebody who focuses and deals with parents and interacts with them. And we're going to also be speaking with somebody who is a cybersecurity specialist, looking at the landscape and giving us some insights into what the real issues are. So again, the data implies a lot, and so we will focus a bit on that. So moving into the presentations, let me just introduce the panel. First, we have Mr. Dion Woolton, cybersecurity consultant representing the IT group. He is based in Barbados, and Dion is going to be speaking to us on the issues of what we need to know, what we need to be aware of to protect our children's identity and generally keep them safe online. And following that, we're going to be having a presentation from Ms. Yolande Lapierre, who is the director of Northgate College, located in Trinidad and Tobago. And Mr. Lapierre is going to be speaking about how do you apply technology in practical ways to provide solutions that are unique to us in the region and unique to specifically Northgate. And we prepare schools and to effectively deliver distance learning in a safe environment, as well as we're going to be following up that presentation with another presentation from Mr. Ramdas. He's going to speak to us about how parents prepare for distance learning in homes and in schools, and hearing from the parents' perspective. So let us move straight into the next presentation. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Woolton.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hope everybody's doing great today. Thank you all for having me at this session. This is I'm just trying to find my section here. 1 second. I'm sure you can see my screen, and I'm gonna, yes. There we go. So, child online protection is, I'm following from Alicia Hoyt's presentation, I think we're on the right course at this level, right? There's a lot of work that needs to be done across the Caribbean. I, as the IT representative speaking on this topic, is working on a part of a project. This project I'm working on is child online protection, but is kind of like a subset of the overall Giga project, which is currently being undertaken in the OECS region. But everything that we're going to touch on today has relevance to what we're going to see here. We're seeing it all around, island-wide shutdowns, school closures, self-isolation measures, and the end result of that is that all of our kids are getting way more face time than what is normal. Some online surveys have showed that our youth are spending 6 hours or more on the internet per day. Now, I have a dad of 3 sons, and sometimes it's difficult to know the difference between FaceTime that is constructive or FaceTime that is for school and FaceTime that is for entertainment or just mischievousness. And there's some of that, yeah? We see instances where kids post content like email, home address, where the parents work, stuff like that. They keep the GPS location on. And while we look forward to all the benefits that digital transformation can bring, to this region in this COVID time, where all services now have to be customer centric and pushed to the internet, so that with school closures and everything being shut down, that you can still conduct your business. You can still pay your bills online. You can still pay your driver's license. So there's a need for confidence in all of that. And, you know, we also need to look at the kids. The kids are also online lots of time, and it is affecting their beliefs and behaviors. Alicia mentioned some of that. Is linked to sex and substance abuse, obesity, and eating disorders. So you have kids who are sitting on a computer for 6 hours a day or more, and they're glued. They're not moving. They're sitting there, and they're just not moving, right? We're seeing evidence of attention deficit disorder, diminished academic performance, hypertension, asthma, sleeping and mood disorders, and other psychological distress, and even some forms of depression that we're seeing in our kids, right? So this presentation is going to look at the kids, but I guess from a clinical psychologist perspective, like what Alicia was alluding to, we also need to look at the teachers, because this is a multidimensional problem and is also a global phenomenon, right? Now, one of the problems that we have found in doing this research within the OECS is that there's simply not enough or any statistics on what is going on. So what I had to do in a lot of my work has been to look at the US. And in the US, there's an abundance of statistics. And we can draw parallels between what's happening in the US and what's happening in the region. And we have evidence to show that there are correlations between the two, right? So we're seeing in the US, young people, 10 to 16 years, who accessed or shared sexual content or images of cyberbullying or violence had up to 50% higher risk of thoughts of suicide. Stick a pin there. We've seen an instance in Suriname about 3 years ago where a young boy committed suicide after playing a dare game online, right? We're seeing 70% increase in the amount of bullying and hate speech. You know, now there's no face-to-face, or there's limited face-to-face due to COVID. So then, you know, the naughty kids would tend to do their bullying rather than doing it face-to-face. The bullying now takes on an online presence, is now being facilitated using the technology. And, you know, the implications of that, the problems of cyberbullying are, I think, more serious than the face-to-face, because with face-to-face, you can pull two kids in a room and say, hey, you're not supposed to treat John that way. But with cyberbullying, as soon as that content hits and goes viral, it is difficult to pull it back. And that speaks to the long-term impacts that this sort of stuff have on our kids. And the teachers are reporting, you know, greater instances of cyberbullying based on some Google surveys that were conducted in 2019. One of the major problems to our kids is the online sex crimes. And I will touch a little more on that. But based on the current situation across the OECS and the Caribbean, we're seeing no statistics, as I said, in terms of crimes against children. So the true extent of the problem isn't really fully known. There are no policies or strategic frameworks focused on the prevention of online crimes against children and the youth. As a result of COVID, we've seen an uptick in internet penetration, not just in the OECS, but across the Caribbean. And that is happening with projects like Giga, because Giga is looking at pushing internet access to the schools and by extension our kids. Children weren't adequately prepared for online schooling, and neither were the parents. This was echoed in the previous presentation. Parents are ill-equipped, ill-prepared, and sometimes don't have the time. The parents are thrown into being IT support specialists, right? And that is creating a lot of problems. and when we look at the laws across the Caribbean, some laws, there's some laws like, areas of child pornography, violation of privacy, defamation, libel, and slander. There's some laws in place, right? Within the OECS, within Trinidad, and within Barbados, there are laws in place, but the laws aren't really focused on the new types of crime that are affecting our children, like revenge porn and that kind of stuff. So we need to look at getting our laws more in line with what's happening. So I think this graphic kind of sums it up in terms of what's transpired here. We've essentially given our kids Ferrari, which is access to the internet, and not put the relevant controls in place, and then they become, victims of pedophiles and cybercrime out there. So I think now's the time that we really have to dial it back and start to think about online safety and the things that we can do to protect our children. It is important to understand what child online protection is. And I think we're all going to be in agreement that child online protection is a comprehensive set of recommendations for all relevant stakeholders on how to contribute to the development of a safe and empowering online environment for children and young people. Now, this initiative is in direct alignment with the COP as presented to the ITU Council in 2008 and endorsed by the UN Secretary General. Now, I think it's important to recognize that this is a multidisciplinary, multidimensional problem. And as Alicia said before, it requires engagement also by the clinical psychologists, the students, and I'll get into it a little more in terms of who's responsible for COP, right? Now, the initiative is founded on 3 basic tenets: identify, protect, and report. So we need to give kids the ability to identify what content looks hazardous, right? They need to be able to protect themselves, whether it's having good internet antivirus and the like on their device. And there needs to be a process through which they can report that someone has caused them harm or intends to cause them harm or disrupt their access to the technology. Now, who's responsible? As I said, individuals. So individuals refers to kids, parents, all citizens. We are all responsible for keeping kids safe online as we move forward in this highly digitized area where everybody, not just online schooling, where everybody is going to be having access. And the responsibility isn't just for online schooling, is whenever our kids go online, whenever they touch a mobile phone, a tablet, everyone is responsible. If you look at educators in schools are required to implement filtering and monitoring controls, and teachers and students need to know what the acceptable use of school resources are. So there's a responsibility on the school environment to know, right? Social support services need to be trained to identify early warning signs and how to prevent and provide care. This all starts with internet service providers and the regulators. They need to provide advanced threat intelligence and internet filtering and monitoring, so that if they see suspicious behavior on the internet, that they should report it. Yeah. In terms of judiciary and law enforcement, they need to create an environment where cybercrimes can be reported, investigated, and prosecuted. Regional, international, non-profit organizations like the ITU, CTU, OAS, all have a responsibility to create forums like this and internet governance forums which address the whole topic of making the internet safer for all of our kids and all the users of the internet, right? The industry practitioners, ensure the legal framework is in place to ensure adequate penalties are imposed on cyber-related crimes. And also, we need easy access to technologies that can help protect our kids, whether it's antivirus, whether it's relationships with Microsoft to ensure that we all run the latest and greatest software, which is protected. We need to reach out and ensure that there's this multi-dimensional working group to focus on this topic of being safe online. Now, here are some of the top online dangers that, that our kids are faced with. The first one is themselves. Our kids, as I said before, they're pushing a lot of content out there without understanding the implications of their actions. You have sexual predators, child pornography, cyberbullying, as I alluded to before, violation of privacy, malicious communication, and also cell phone crimes. If you look at some of the risky behaviors that excessive FaceTime is leading to, we have kids who are posting too much personal information, interacting with strangers, playing online games with strangers, sending personal information, visiting X-rated sites, visiting extremist sites, and sites that are focused on radicalization, talking about sex with strangers, sending sexually explicit images, posting malicious content to cause harm, distress, or embarrassment it could be to a friend, it could be just for humor, but the end result, it can have long-lasting impact on someone. Now, what we're seeing, we've seen an instance where, and these are things that hit the press. I think it was a 14-year-old girl that was abducted by a Facebook friend. That happened in Trinidad about 4 years ago. 3 years ago, a student chopped off his mom's hand because she took away his cell phone. Again, in Trinidad, these are the ones that have made it to the newspapers. But trust me, there are more instances, there are more cases, and the problem is that there are no statistics and places that you can go to get real content on what is going on across the Caribbean. Online predators and child pornography. I think these graphics speak for themselves. The internet allows a level of anonymity, so our kids can be tricked. Our kids don't have the street savvy like how the adults might. They don't understand. You can't go. It isn't like meeting some person when you go down the road, like your mom or your grandma might say, beware of strangers, don't speak to strangers when you're walking down the road. The internet removes that face-to-face interaction, and you can be anything or anyone on the internet. Look at that scary picture of that 45-year-old man pretending to be a 13-year-old girl, right? Cyberbullying, as I said, is dangerous, has long-lasting implications on our kids. And we need to, all schools need to have a focus on cyberbullying across the Caribbean. There's the bad internet content, which can affect our children's beliefs and values, verbal abuse of race, sex, or minorities, radical websites that infect your computer with viruses and malware, malicious communication, and violations of privacy. Know when your child needs help. So here are a few symptoms that we all should pay close attention to. When your child is becoming uncharacteristically aggressive, depressed, anxious, or withdrawn, and they're spending long amounts of time on their device, that is the time for intervention. Poor bond or relationship with their friends, knowledge of adult issues which are inappropriate for their age, loss of of self-confidence or self-esteem. They've become socially withdrawn. They avoid certain situations which would suggest, something is wrong. They're not interested in going to school. They don't want to take a bus ride. Sometimes they might be seeking additional affection. So there's a decrease in school performance or loss of interest. And sometimes you see your child might be asked by someone to keep a message or communication a secret, right? So I think one of the things we have to do is open all the channels of communication and have those that for the ladies call it female intuition, right? For the guys, I call it the spider senses. Have those spider senses on and pay attention to your child and what might look suspicious with their behavior. Across the Caribbean, there are laws. Barbados has the Computer Misuse Act. Trinidad has the Cybercrime Bill, and the OECS is the Criminal Code, plus the Electronics Crime Bill. And all of those speak to the areas of violation of privacy, child pornography, malicious communication, libel and slander. And they speak to the prosecution of the guys who are doing wrong. But I think there's a lot of room before we get there to keep our kids safe, right? That is where we need to focus our attention. So I know I kind of speed through this, and this is a topic that I can spend an easy hour and a half talking on, because there's some stories that I can share. You know, you can always feel free to reach back to me. If, you know, I'll definitely go and be reaching out to Alicia Hope, because there's some work that I'm doing and I need her assistance. But in terms of next steps to address child online protection across the Caribbean and some of the work that we're doing within the OECS, now this consultancy, the focus of it is to create a policy and strategic framework for child online protection within the OECS. My hope and ambition is that once that is done, that's going to be farmed out across the Caribbean, because all of us need help. The situation in Barbados is no better. Situation in Trinidad, Jamaica, I'm sure is no better. So we need to get that push all across the Caribbean. We need to create a roadmap for stakeholder involvement and consultative contribution and engagement. Obtain national buy-in and participation, develop sustainable programs which will address human and finance resources. So, you know, a child online protection initiative or campaign needs to be driven by something. So on the heels of that, it will obviously need to look at developing private-public sector partnerships so that content can be delivered that is culturally sensitive and pushed to our kids so that they know how to identify the risk, to our parents so that they can identify the risk as well, the teachers, and everyone who's responsible in keeping our kids safe. And I think that is my final slide. I wish everyone has a great day. You hear the passion in my voice on this topic. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at dion.olton@caribbeancsc.com. We speak at all sorts. We've been supporting the CTU and the ITU across the region for probably over 10 years now in raising the banner and raising the flag to say the time is now. But I think with what's happening with COVID, the acceleration of having almost all of our kids online, the time is now. We need to protect our kids.
Thank you very much, Dion. Excellent presentation, and we do hear the passion in your voice. I would just ask you to hold on for a bit. We're going to go to the next presentation, but certainly we have a segment of the panel that we will be asking for, questions and answers and interactions. Certainly, I would want you to consider a few questions that I thought of while you were presenting. The whole notion of parents becoming more effective in managing their children's face time. That is something I think we need to get some ideas on how do we manage that in practical ways from your experience. Another thing I would want you to consider is how do we enhance the collection of statistics on cybersecurity issues with the data deficit that we do have. What do we need to do? Some creative ways from your experience and observations that you would have, made in your field of work. And a third point I think I would want to mention to you would be the whole issue of public awareness. Especially as it relates to the risk that, to address specific cybersecurity risk. We know there are gaps in the legislation and policy prescriptions, but how do we, for instance, find ways to communicate and what should be the message, what should be the strategies to communicate that we use to communicate to our parents, to children, to teachers, all the stakeholders involved, So, I think that those were a few questions that I came up with, and I just wanted you to kind of, think about it. So before we have those questions, we're going to move on to the next presenter.
If I might just interject, Junior. I'm sort of tracking that people are putting questions in the chat. So we just remind you that you want your question, which is very important, as opposed to maybe a comment or an exchange, to please put your question in the Q&A so that we can pick up on it very quickly and direct it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I haven't seen any questions as yet, but we'll be checking. The team is checking to see. So moving forward, I'm really happy and excited to invite Ms. Yolande Lapierre, the director of Northgate College, to present to us some considerations and lessons learned from the experience as an educator at Northgate College. So, Ms. Lapierre, are you on?
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. McIntyre. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much to the CTU for inviting me to get an opportunity to share a little bit about our experience at Northgate College. So just to give you a little background about who we are, Northgate College is a private secondary school that is in Trinidad and Tobago, and I am the director of Northgate College, and we are also the school in Trinidad is the core school of the Northgate global system, because there are Northgate schools around the earth. Some of them, we have a partner school in Jamaica. We do have schools in the US. We have schools in various aspects of the African continent, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Malawi. So we do have quite a few schools around the world, but the one in Trinidad and Tobago is the core school. And so we had the opportunity to pioneer something different when COVID-19 hit, and all schools throughout the globe had to treat with the sudden onset of a transfer to an online system. We had the opportunity to sit as a leadership team and think about what can we do, not only while we were permanently online, but what could be done for when we return to some form of a hybrid system. And so that's what I'm going to spend 10 minutes to speak about, just to share what our experience has been. There have been some things that we've learned, and there certainly have been some things that we are still learning. So even in this presentation, we are not in any way saying that everything is completely covered. I think that's the beauty of education and of pioneering something. You discover things as you are going along. So a simple definition for what EduFlex is: it's a technology-based solution which facilitates an immersive teaching and learning experience. It allows students who are on the physical campus and those who are in a virtual space, or if I am to reframe, in an online space. I think I heard the gentleman from Yella say everyone uses virtual these days, but it's not always virtual. So let me correct that and say it's in an online space to have the same quality instruction in real time. So you'll see a little photo on the left here. These are some of our kids in the science lab, and you're seeing a laptop. She actually has a partner online here, and they are completing a lab together. So you're seeing the physical, the lab equipment next to the laptop as well. What does this actually mean? It means that our students who are online, they are able to interact with their in-class peers. And a lot of infrastructural updates were done to the campus to ensure that this could be done. And I know from some of the presenters who spoke earlier on today, you get the sense of the scale of what has to be done to improve your campus infrastructure to allow for a seamless environment where those who are in one space and those who are in the other space can feel like they are connected. We wanted to ensure that when our students came back out to school, it wouldn't just be that you sit, you look at a screen, you hear the teacher teach, and you don't get to talk to those kids who are not in the same class with you. So actually, in practice, students come to class at Northgate, at the physical campus, but they also log on with their mobile devices. And students who are off the physical campus log into the same class. And therefore, they get the same banter, the back and forth, the exchange that can take place, both the helpful exchanges as well as the sometimes mischievous ones that can happen in a regular class, so that as far as possible, what would have been considered a normal class is simulated. Okay, now we, as you'd see in the second part of this slide, the part that is highlighted or where the background is white, the classroom facilitates live streaming of a physical classroom with the teacher instructor, a quota of socially distant students, and technology tools to transmit the course material, as I would have said, and the students can talk. They can ask questions, whether you're in class or online, of each other or of the instructor or teacher. We have used Google Classroom, Google Meet, and the apps for education for a long while, even before the pandemic struck. So it was good to hear that presentation on Google Classroom from Mr. Garcia this morning. We were quite familiar with Google Classroom and what it allowed, but there were so many other tools that were added when we entered the pandemic that it really enhanced the whole experience. But it's important to mention that, because I know for schools who may be listening, either parents, educators who listen and say, how did you get this done in such a short space of time? It's because we were familiar with Google, the Google Apps for Education, and therefore a lot of back-end things were already in place. For example, students already all had student email addresses. The teachers already all have teacher addresses. Parents were already linked in to our system, even before we had to revert to an online model. There were just certain practices that were already developed, that teachers would prepare material that would be posted to Google Classroom for review. This was when we were in brick and mortar or face-to-face setting. So transferring that to a hybrid system made it a little less traumatic than it would have been for someone who would have had to start from ground zero. Didn't mean that we didn't have things to learn, we certainly did. And therefore, in building things out, we had a couple considerations. The first is that we wanted to ensure that the two sets of students who were in different locations, just because you have to have social distancing, the entire class is not able to come out at the same time, there's a rotational system in place. We didn't want to have a situation where if the students were off campus, they would only have asynchronous learning. Can there be a way that we could have them taught at the same time? And that's what EduFlex solves, that yes, we can teach them even if you're not on the not in the same physical space, and there should be no difference in the quality of instruction. And that has been our experience. With students who are online will say, yeah, I feel like if I'm right there, I don't feel as if I am on the outside kind of peering in at the real action that's happening on the campus. I feel as if I'm actually in the class. We wanted to ensure also that there would be a minimal adjustment to the teaching methods used by the staff. I know that many presenters over the course of this forum have mentioned that having to pivot fairly quickly can be a fairly stressful experience. And so our staff was incredibly hard and they are fully invested. And we don't want to put them in a situation where they had to learn a lot of new technology tools on the fly without giving them the opportunity to just enhance what we currently use. So in designing this solution, we wanted to make sure that it was minimally disruptive to the current set of teaching methods. And that links to what I said before, that we were already quite familiar with and used aspects of Google Classroom, so we did not have to relearn a lot of new things. We also wanted to ensure there was a healthy balance between ongoing curriculum delivery and some of the same screen time issues that Ms. Hoyt would have mentioned, that Mr. Olton would have mentioned, as well as keeping in mind what are the Ministry of Education stipulations. So we're very, very concerned about making sure that it's not just a day of 8 periods back to back sitting down at a screen. We build in things like, okay, non-screen time, put your screen down, go outside, go do something different, go find something outdoors and whatever, come back and share it with us, tell us what you have. Teachers were trained for things like, okay, we have to do exercises for your eyes. Tell the kids, all right, now close your eyes. Okay, open. All right, look in the distance at something. Okay, now look at your nose bridge and other things like that, just to give them the opportunity to realize I don't have to sit and look at this screen all the time for 6 hours a day. So we built things into our system to help our kids to model the right balance and to help them to practice these things as well. And the final thing I'd mention with a key consideration is that our school community is quite vibrant, and in having to build out a hybrid model, and even the virtual one, which is before we got the opportunity to return to class, we wanted to make sure that we didn't compromise the quality of school life. So there are things that we ensured we maintained, like let's do virtual sport activities together. Let's have a weekly challenge. So we have photo of the week. The kids are encouraged to go outside, find your photos, come and share them. And when we have our school assembly, we get to see different things that you did outdoors. Like our virtual 5K, go run a 5K, post your time. Let's celebrate the top 10 winners. So that there are things that we do as a school that are not just based on what's the curriculum content, how is this linked to my CXC exams. We're talking about school life that must continue in a wholesome way in a hybrid system that is probably going to be with us for a while, because the pandemic is not going away anytime soon. So final slide, what are some lessons that we learned? And I'll sum them up fairly quickly. Leadership is important. Leadership is important. You must have a leadership core that can talk through these issues, a leadership core that is trusted so that people can give you open feedback and candid feedback, and you can take that feedback into how we can plan for the next version of whatever model or solution your school comes up with to treat with the current circumstances. Staff support is critical. We can have a plan, we can sit down and work out, come up with an idea and say, we think that this is something that can work, but you must have your staff behind you. And my staff has been wonderful in that regard. Just as a part of our school, our culture is very much, it encourages innovation. It encourages staff members saying, I found something new, let me come and share what we have found. Do you think we can try this new thing? It might be a possible solution to an issue that we've been seeing. And therefore, because the staff is invested and empowered to try new things, making changes becomes much easier. Staff and student relationship. I do want to circulate a little bit on this because it was one of the things that Ms. White touched on. Making sure that your staff maintains as far as they can that relationship with the students that goes beyond their curriculum or their subject content. Simple example. I remember once one of our teachers sharing that he found it was much easier to start the class with just talking about whatever was the topic of the day. It may be a trending topic for the youth, or it may not, you know. So if we were speaking about it today, for example, they may talk about, oh, you know, what do you think is, how do you think Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet are going to handle this crisis? The kids jump up, they come to life. They're like, oh, you know about this, I want to talk about it. And they jump right in and start talking. You may spend 15 minutes talking about that, just hearing everybody's opinions and so on. And then you get to the work that you planned for the day. But you know what that does? It warms up the classroom space. It allows the students to relax. They don't come into every class thinking, okay, I've just left Spanish, now I'm going to math. And because they feel that they can talk to you, it also keeps those lines of communication open. And then they reach out to you, you know, they reach out to you for other things as well, to say, you know, I'm concerned about X or Y. And those are things that we can then red flag and talk to the home about. So that home school connection, that staff-student relationship, it has been maintained in our model, even with the limitations. It's not the same as if you were face-to-face, but we certainly see it as a priority to make sure that children know you can talk to me, your teachers are accessible, your principal is still accessible, we reach out to them. even if they don't reach out to us and let them know, hey, I'm tracking you. I noticed something is not right. You want to talk? Let's meet online and talk a little bit. So that staff-student relationship has been critical. And as I said, homeschool connection, sometimes in just sending, parents are always involved. We keep them up to date, not only with email, but like with little videos, monthly videos of these are some of the things that we're doing. We provide sight lines because they no longer come to the physical campus. So we have to give them a sense of what's going on. We pioneered our virtual parent days because we said, look, you can't see us every week when you pop in. So at least once a term or once a year, let's meet with you and give you that one-on-one feedback. These are things that we have learned that have helped to make the hybrid system that we have, the EduFlex system, much more human, if I can use that term. It's not cold, it's not sterile. It has been able to move from a face-to-face interaction to a partial and a technology-based interaction that doesn't feel cold or removed. Very much who we are as Northgate hybrid is who we were as Northgate in person since we've existed. So that's it, just getting an opportunity to share with you our experience. And I hope that it was able to provide encouragement to fellow educators, teachers, parents, and stakeholders in this space. Thanks.
Excellent, Ms. Lapierre. This is really interesting and exciting to hear. And I'm intrigued with what you said. You spoke about the whole collaborative environment, that environment that engenders sharing and partnership. So you're partnering, you're triangulating that relationship between the school, the children, the parents. And from that is the basis from which all the innovation takes place, all the ideas emerge, and it's really, really, this is novel and this is interesting, and I'm not sure if it exists elsewhere, but that collaboration and sharing, and that is unique, and that's the basis from it. So it doesn't start with the technology; it starts with a philosophy that underpins everything that you do, and so you can get that cooperation. There is an issue to get teachers on board, to get parents on board, that is built as part of the system. And
oh yeah, I want to say that was a fabulous presentation. I never had even heard of Northgate prior to your presentation. And of course, because it's a private school. But while you were presenting, I was thinking to myself that, I know that one operates in a quote unquote competitive environment when you think about whether it's in the public school system with results and so on, and you're a private institution, but certainly that you've managed to cull a template and a methodology. I guess in your terms, you would say a pedagogy, whatever, but I would say methodology, which actually other educators in particular could benefit from, which would lead me to ask a very, sort of off-track question. I would imagine, and it's related to a question in the chat that was really meant for Alicia, and that was someone asking about the role of teachers' unions in understanding these crucial connections and collaborations with all stakeholders to ensure equity and social and emotional well-being. Well, I don't know if you have unionized teachers, but it comes back to the question of the way in which you've developed that sort of system that does include teachers and how educators can benefit from that kind of approach. You want to comment there?
So I can certainly speak from our teachers' vantage point. For us, I would say it starts with selection, recruitment and selection, how teachers are recruited for our purposes. And I know that it is very different from how it is done in the public system. But a teacher or an educator at heart has to be someone who cares about his charges or her charges. You can't get into education and be blasé or be non-committal. And therefore, teachers at Northgate start from a place of, I'm very much interested in education. I will talk and collaborate with and reach out to anyone who is also interested in education. So as a college, we have hosted seminars, spoken to other principals, other schools, not at all because we're a private entity. We are not We're not saying this is ours, we don't want to speak to anyone. We are more than willing to share and to collaborate in any forum. Hence the reason why we were happy to be able to come on to speak to CTU today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lapierre, for sharing. And I'll ask you to stay on it as well, because we have a few questions we want to pose at the end. So we're going to be moving on to our next presenter, Mr. Ramdas, and he's going to be speaking to us at, from the perspective of the parent, essentially how, Mr. Ramdas deals with parents on a larger scale. So you're going to hear from him, and he is the director of Restore, a sense of I Can. And so, Mr. Ramdas, are you on?
I am on. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Great.
Okay, so huge good morning to the CTU's team, and thank you for having me here this morning. Mr. McIntyre, Ms. Leonard, hi, Josanne, and all the other listeners. I don't know if I could seek your permission, sir, to be informal and to talk, as we say in Trinidad, brass tacks about parents. So I don't want to present about what parents are going through, because you know what, you all know that. Let's get some heart-to-heart brass tacks, talk about what we're experiencing as parents and perhaps what we can do about it. So do you know, have I all gone that, and any problems you deal with your administration? Yes? Right, great. So the thing is, you could go ahead and light up the chat, right? Go ahead and light up the chat and spam it. They'll figure out how to filter it after. But how many of you all here are not just parents, but you have a parent who's currently in the education system? And I think Alicia should have been the one here talking about 5 kids from, I think she said preschool, I can't remember, it's preschool to university. So she really had a broad spectrum spread. How many of you all are parents right now, or would have been a parent or know a parent? And the reality is, as a parent, the bottom line, underlying thing that we would want is what's best for our children. We'll come to education just. We want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to have the things that we perhaps didn't want. And unfortunately, some of us want our kid to live the dreams that we have. And what happens is that once there's a gap between what you want for your kids and what we perceive is happening, we try to fill that gap. And the problem we're in right now is that because of the environment that we've been thrown into, we don't have the resources, we don't have the know-how, we sometimes don't even understand what's happening, and not being able to fill that gap is bringing a tremendous amount of pressure to us. Because let's try and understand what a school means to a parent. A school, I mean, we speak up a lot about academics. A school definitely is where you send your children to become academics, and permit me to send, is my opinion, an outdated academic system. But that's where we send our kids, because you'll go there and you'll graduate boy and you'll come out, you'll graduate girl and you'll get a job and you fix your life, get a good government job, they can't fire you. That's good thought. And then, I don't know if that's true for CTU too, that's why Josanne laughed. But you have the academic learning, right? Then you have, but the school is the place where your kids get their social development. That's where they make friends. I have friends from primary school who are like closer than biological brothers and sisters. That's where your social development take place. The school is where your physical development take place. I never made the cricket team in school, but I used to play cricket. That didn't stop me from liking it. And I never make a football team either, but that didn't stop me from liking it. And now that you make my biggest, see why I never make the teams. But the reality is that is where the physical development took place in school. And then for a lot of parents in Trinidad, I know we're speaking to a broader audience, and I'm not sure of all the regions, how you operate, but in Trinidad and Tobago, for a lot of parents, the school is where your child got breakfast, and the school is where your child got lunch. And then some parents are not gonna like me saying this, I have to use correct words here. The school is where you send your children to get babysit for the day, so you could do what you have to do, but no, not babysit, supervise. So the school is where supervision happens, so that we as parents could live our lives, or just go to work or whatever it might be. And then bam, remove all of it, just swept away because of the situation we're in. We don't have to deal with that. We have to deal with all the issues associated with not just missing academia, because the knee-jerk reaction was to try and fill the gap of academic learning. And I'll come to that just now, why I call it a knee-jerk reaction. But as parents, what are some of the things we had to deal with immediately? And I'm going to ask you a question just on, and please respond in chat, right? Financial. That was the cry in the beginning, financial. Financial meaning we as parents, a lot of us lost income, had reduced income, end up, you know, all of us, and that has nothing to do with being in a sector or socioeconomic sector, whatever. It happened across the board. But because of the divide, I think Alicia spoke about that, there's a huge gap in that divide. Why the financial affected specifically education? Because that's what I'm speaking about, parents in education. The reality is devices and connectivity is where financial came in. So many parents, you'll be surprised. I mean, I'm part of a nonprofit organization and I'm speaking from that point of view. And I'll speak about, I won't say solution, but stuff that parents got together with us and did. And there are thousands, not one, not two, thousands of parents who did not have devices for their kids to use at home and connectivity. And if you have multiple kids, that's a whole different ballgame. Because if you have multiple kids like Alicia, and the spectrum is such that some in preschool or different kind of school, and you have multiple kids in the house needing devices. And then on top of that, we need devices as parents to work if you're working from home. Next issue, so that's where financial come in. But in addition to financial issues related to that, what about the other issues like what I'm speaking about, supervision? All of a sudden, as parents, we now have to supervise our child's learning. We're not trained to do that. We're not accustomed doing it. But in addition to having to supervise their learning and their behavioral pattern and everything else, we also have to try and work. I work closely with teachers, and so I could speak a lot about teachers. It's a nightmare. I think one of your speakers spoke about it. For a teacher to be a teacher and supervise 2 kids home and try and supervise everything that's happening online. Supervision, major issue that we probably need to discuss. And then, of course, there are lots of concerns. Because our movement to digital, and permit me to make a controversial statement, there's a lot of intelligent people who are judging digital education based on the responses and what's happening because of a knee-jerk reaction being pushed into a digital system. And I'm saying that you can't judge it like that. That's like taking a young child, dropping them in a river, white water, rushing, and they can't handle it, and then you make a decision. Because I have a doctorate and I understand human everything, I am making a decision that human beings are not designed to swim. You cannot judge the education results and what's happening right now and say, okay, digital is working or digital is not working, because we were pushed into an environment, we were pushed into a situation that we were not prepared for. Our teachers are not trained to be online teaching. Our content, I mean, I was so impressed with, get right, our Kenaton's presentation and the kind of content that he's putting to the table and all of that. But that's not out there for everything as yet, but we're gonna get there. So a lot of concern is with respect to the child's progress. I've dealt with literally a couple thousand parents over the last year or two based on the organization wing. And the general consensus is that parents are not satisfied with the progress of the child. Well, you know, I had a next one, and when he was in standard 5, he didn't know blah, 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 and this one. But because the progress in the minds of the parents is not where it should be right now. Of course, you have the examination bodies trying to react and respond and maybe readjust examinations and so on, but that doesn't mean the quality is there. And then, of course, fantastic presentation by Ms. Holton there on security. Again, because of the organization I'm involved with, we have hundreds, not one, not two, hundreds of kids that we deal with that are experiencing situations online. And what I found with parents is that as parents, we are in what I refer to as ignorant bliss. We're just not aware of what's happening in the child's screen and what's happening. He spoke to that, I'm not going to repeat that. We're just not aware of sometimes the dangers of what's going on. So, you know, we're now ignorant bliss in terms of what is happening. So let's put, if someone is experiencing a lot of this crap, all of this crap, let's put them on a scale of 1 to 10 of frustration, 10. right? And I would like you all to go on chat and throw some numbers to me. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have some parents, and I'll be honest here, when this situation happened, I had 3 kids in school all at the same time. So I'm flipping information here now. But all my 3 boys, because when Sugan, my wife, decided to have children, everything came fast, 3 boys, close space in their age group. All my boys were in university at the same time when the situation happened. And then, bam, online school. What did that mean for me? It meant I was saving $5,000 a month rent in UE. It meant we didn't have to run up UE 3 times a week, beat the traffic, because my wife wanted to cook food and prep for the children and all the things that parents would sometimes do to spoil their children. It meant my kids were home. And I think somebody was speaking about how they said they were happy about it, but not the kids. But my kids certainly not happy about it. But from a parent's point of view, financially, because the hit we would have taken financially was, well, I won't say compensated, but was a reduced effect, because our cost of educating these boys in UE and rent and all of that dropped. They were home. So there are different experiences. So let's say if someone had a positive experience or the impact wasn't that bad for them as a 1. If you're not a parent, think about someone close to you and get a number in your head where you think the scale is. 10 means, oh God, multiple children, financial issues, how to deal with it. I'm not prepared digitally or otherwise to deal with what's happening. Put in chat a number. And let's take that number and try and figure out what is the commonality we're dealing with here and what we can do. I don't just want to harp on the issues. I want to start speaking to what we can do as parents, because, I mean, we all know the issues. But one point I want to make is that the education sector, for years, and as we say in Trinidad, donkey years, people speak about reform. And I hope we understand that reforming an education sector is not going to happen easily, right? It takes a lot of will, political will and otherwise to do that. But as parents, we are now in a situation because of a crisis that we could be part of education reform. We can be part of the solution that is happening, because even though we're saying, hey, lots of problems, lots of issues, let's see what we can do. So the first thing I want to speak to is devices and what parents did. Let's talk solutions. A whole group of parents got involved with us, and we started to collect scrap computers. Anything you have to give away, give it away. And I can tell you something, in the last year and a half, 2,000 devices were refurbished by parents and students and pushed back into the system. Actually, RSC got an EMA, one of the awards for doing a project like that. I'm not saying we're not crying. Yes, we're crying. I wish CSR initiatives will give all people a new device, and we have a new device, but it's not going to happen like that. But if you're getting a device, and I want to be a little negative here, of those 2,000 computers we gave out, so many parents, I mean, the basic care that's required, you know, I mean, and even supervision. So many devices come back and your children have Roblox in it, and it have this one, and they go on porn site and it have viruses and all kind of bunch. And it's like we gotta be a little more responsible as parents, because it's because it's thrown on us and we're accustomed for teachers and educators to be doing that for us. The reality is, as parents, we need to know we have to be doing part of that. And it's a huge thing, and somebody spoke to it, is our parents, we're not totally digitally literate. Not all of us are. And we got to make that effort. We got to make that effort to understand what is happening behind the scenes. We got to become digital literate. And tell you something, you don't have to go on and do any kind of MIT course to become digital literate. Again, as an organization, like we've been doing camps for probably more than a year now for parents and students. We have over 1,000 parents who attended camps. And now we started to integrate the camps. So now we have the students and the parents mixing, and parents coming and doing app development. And we have a program where we have like about 50 kids teaching parents. They're not teaching their own parent. Learning from your own child is one of the hardest things. You'll come burp, 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 and look at you as if where the ignorance come from. But having other kids teach you and support you. But as parents, we can do that. We need to make a decision. You know what? I am responsible for me. And if I'm responsible for me, I heard in a session we went yesterday, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you can't pour from an empty cup, bro, we need to fill. Sis, we need to fill our cups ourselves. So we need to start becoming. We need to start being a little more open and discussion with our kids and understanding their digital world. There was already a gap with our kids' digital world and ours, but that gap was being dealt with socially because there was an environment in school. Now it's been dealt with because there's no geographic boundaries again. Don't feel because your child going to a fancy school somewhere or not going to a fancy school, they're not being exposed to any and everybody online. It is happening. You probably don't know it's happening, but it is happening. You have your child in a room where you can't see the screen and they're there whole day. Not as a parent. You better put that screen where every time you're walking, they know you're watching the screen. And then you will get the child a headphone set, you're not even hearing what's going on. Of course, if you have multiple children, you have no choice. But hear what's going on, take off the TV. A lot of our parents, we find ourselves in a position where we stuck home. So we become Netflixers and HBO Flixers and all that. And we binge watching all kind of, I ain't saying don't do that because we need stress relief also. We need to have our social life. But what I'm saying is, as parents, we have to get involved there. And here's one. I want to say that as parents, I didn't like to hear. We have to stop playing the blame game. I'm involved with principals and teachers. We have to stop playing the blame game because it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the principal's fault, it's not the minister's fault. It is a situation that happened and we have to live with it. And how can we be more collaborative and work with the educators? And one last quick suggestion because I realize time allocated to me is gone. Form groups with other parents. I'm encouraging something right now. A lot of parents, like I use Discord, right? And the first thing you hear, Discord, why there's gamers and you have porn in Discord? Well, you have porn in Google too. You have porn all about the place. Learn to manage it. And I'm encouraging parents to form Discord channels and Discord groups and get your children involved in it. We have a whole bunch of Discord servers run with our campus and start getting peer support from other parents. Start discussing things, start understanding the environment and observing. And start becoming the change within yourself that we want. Because you know what? We're in deep waters, but we're in a position where we have the opportunity to get that education reform that is so badly needed. The gift of this crisis is going to be the change, but we're going to decide how we're coming out of this. Some will come out alive, some will not. Some will come out better, some will not. But you know what? Find somewhere inside you, a place of spiritual depth. I'm not going to preach education. Find a place inside you so that you could fill your cup and then water your children because they need it. Time run out on me, sir. Thank you for allowing me to just spill.
Thank you very much for keeping it real. And I know you don't like the formality, so I'll refer to you as Raj.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ramdas and Raj. And so, you're keeping it real. You really, and I like the perspective you're bringing. You're bringing it from a parent's perspective and the personal responsibility that the parents has to take to deal with the real issues before them. And so it's not a matter of throwing your hands up in the air. There is support, but you have to be willing and you have to be willing to leverage that support. And so that is really excellent. Thank you very much for that presentation. So we heard from 3 presenters and we just want to get to some questions and responses now. We have one question in the chat here. This from Alicia Carter Fisher. And that question is, as a parent, how do you convince young teenagers that some sites are dangerous when their friends are on it? And we talk a lot about the whole issue of FaceTime and reducing that. And I would want, I suppose, to hear feedback from all the presenters on that question because it's topical. And I'll probably start with Dion. Dion, how would you respond to that question? You spoke about reducing FaceTime. And do you have any suggestions in that area?
I think the last presenter, Mr. Ramdas, would have mentioned some key things. Yeah, I think parents need to be more involved, and it's difficult. It's a difficult proposition to be more involved in policing your kids while you yourself have to work. Some parents, I have a business partner who he has 2 kids, and his 2 kids, one is 6 and one is 12, and is a difficult proposition to work. And also you have a 6-year-old who needs supervision, right? It's really difficult. So how do you manage? There's no easy answer. I told my parent, there's no easy answer, but I think one of the things that I do and look at my own personal experience, I ensure that my kids' computers are visible from the door. The screens are visible from the door, so they don't know when I turn up at the door. And the doors are always left open in my house, no closed doors. Yeah. So I get to see what they do. I go check the history to see the places that they've been going. And being a technocrat, and all parents aren't technocrats, I don't even need to touch their computer. I can log on to my modem and see who's going to which sites, right? So when they tell me, oh, daddy, I wasn't on YouTube, I know you were on YouTube. So I think one of the things too, you also have to set clear guidelines. There's some things that are not acceptable when you're doing your online schooling. And the online schooling is different for different islands, because like for Barbados, we've been online schooling since the start of September, right? But for other islands, like in the OECS, there are some schools that have face-to-face school. Some schools have rotation. So so the problem is different. There are different magnitudes of that problem that we're seeing across the Caribbean. But for me personally, as I said, put guidelines in place, set boundaries, let kids know the boundaries, what you should do during school time, what sort of sites you should not go to, and you need to be able to police them as well. But it's difficult.
And just a follow-up question to that, and before I move on to Mr. Pierre, you mentioned the whole issue of a lack of policy prescriptions, regulations, laws, legislative positions on cybersecurity that is actually enforced. And so my question is, and it came up in the chat as well, are there any other solutions in the area of public persuasion or public announcements, or some awareness campaign that we can probably start to focus on, just to raise awareness to address the policy gaps? Even there might be in small areas, but
Yeah, so some of the islands across the Caribbean have logged on to the Get Safe online campaigns, which is out of the UK, right? But then when you look at the uptake, we're not seeing the change in behaviors that we would like. We're not seeing the number of kids going to those sites to make themselves avail of the content, right? So that is a problem. And I think to get our kids and get our communities aware of the risk more. So one area is awareness, and two, how to navigate this whole thing is to produce a program which is from our people to our people. So when I speak to you, right, I speak to you not as an American trying to get American content down the throats of a Bajan or a Trinidadian. I speak to you as a regional man who has experienced identity theft, violation of privacy, and I relate it back to you in your language. So a lot of the programs that we need to move to get our kids and our citizens aware needs to be from our people to our people. Understanding the cultural nuances, right? That is the only way we're going to move this needle, right? That is the only way.
Yes, I like the whole notion of being culturally relevant and developing content for ourselves that we can relate to get the message across.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is really excellent. Thanks a lot at the end. I just have one final question. I know we have to wrap up. One question for Mr. Pierre. And that question really is the whole, you spoke a lot about the collaboration at school and the relationships that have been forged between parents and teachers and the students. And so, I want to get us a little more insight into that relationship, and how would you use that relationship to address issues of parenting in terms of children? How do they, the challenges we have now in the midst of the pandemic, reducing the face time, all right, and issues that children would have with engaging with remote learning, and how do you, are there any solutions, any specific strategies? And that question is directed to Mr. Parental. How do you strategize? I know the relationship is there already. How do you build upon that to assist deal with some of these issues, like, in using FaceTime and educating parents, in ways that they can inform their children or even better supervise their children at home while they are online. So I don't know if Mr. Pierre has a response.
Yes. I think I can answer that by linking it to the question that I think was posted that you said was posted as a question from the participant. I believe it may have been a parent or a teacher who asked, how do you convince, I think that's the word that they used, how do you convince your child that, some sites should be sites that they don't visit? And from our experience, it really is an issue of relationships and negotiating or using those relationships, those positive relationships, to help to positively influence the children in the right direction. I fully agree with and with Mr. Olton that there are some things that as a parent you'd be able to do, check the history and browser and all the other stuff and use the technological solutions. But the thing from our experience is that the children are looking for something where they can bond or that they have in common. And therefore they may visit sites and places where they're in search of something that is missing from that social interaction. And so what we do is try to find ways for the kids to still be able to meet online, but they're not necessarily meeting to do work. I believe Mr. Ramdas spoke about that, where he was talking about, have your Discord groups and so on, so that they can meet, they can talk. You find alternative forms or things that can attract or pull the kids in a more positive direction. And we also encourage looking out for each other. I suppose you may almost call it kind of like a neighborhood watch on a class level, so that you are looking out for each other. Sometimes, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, I think it may be in the wider Caribbean as well, if you were to say something, you can be seen as a snitch, and that can have a negative connotation. But for us, we say, if you see something and you say something, you are helping to save or safeguard your friend. So using that trust that has been built over the years to say, if you see something that you think is of concern, report it, say something to your teacher, say something to a senior student who we've built opportunities for discussion with, so that they can then report it to the right authority and your friend can get help. So that would just be a practical way of saying how building relationships can be leveraged to help to get the kids into a more wholesome place, as opposed to going down dark bunny trails that they may find themselves very difficult to get out of afterwards.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good. Excellent.
Right. So we're sort of on the penultimate stretch, as we say. I just really wanted to very quickly give a big shout out there to Raj for that presentation from the parents' perspective. I personally sit on a board of a denominational school, and I don't have children of school age, but it's my way of giving back in the community. And I'm very much aware of some of the things that you raised in terms of the socioeconomic profile and the fact that a lot of parents have been constrained. And to commend the work of Restore ICANN in what you've been doing when you talk about restoring computers and so on. So I'm sure, like a partner with the CTU, and so that information has gone out, and that people can really get in touch with your organization to be able to see how the programs and so that you've been rolling out, like using the kids to help the literacy amongst parents, particularly those who are financially or socioeconomically challenged. I think that was really tremendous with that coming out. So thanks for that, Raj. 12:25, we're more than on track, and Junior has slipped out, and we've been joined by the Secretary General himself, bells and whistles. I've really enjoyed, I don't know about the rest of your participants. I hope that your polls will ask them what they thought. What SG is going to do now is, apart from thanking everyone before he does that, is do a sort of wrap of the proceedings of today, and maybe just a little throwback to connecting it to what we did yesterday.
Yes, thank you so much, Joanne. And we're at the end, really, of this 2-day, half-day forum on ICT and education, the Caribbean Forum. And I see Dion has his hand up. Dion, do you have a really pressing?
Yes, I really want to say, I really want to add one final thing, right? I think as we move forward, we need to start getting our youngsters, our kids, understand what it means to be a digital citizen, right? And what their behavior. So that, I think that kind of sums it up. To be a digital citizen, whether you're 6 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old, these are the new responsibilities of digital citizens, right? And once we can clearly articulate that to our kids, then our kids will start to make better decisions for themselves, because once you go digital, it's difficult to pull it back, right? So I think that is, from here going forward, I think we need to start looking at, what our digital identity is going to look like from here, and how we need to behave and all that great stuff. That's my final contribution. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I actually, I like this saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it has African origins, and it is so true. And how do we, in this new environment, create that village, that virtual village, maybe that meta village, that would allow us to raise our children in the right way, in this new context. So thank you for that. We are wrapping up, and I want to thank you, because this forum, ICT and Education, is a follow-on from our CTU ICT week held in September last year. But we really felt that we could not do justice to the issue of ICT and education within that 5 days, because we dealt with so many other issues. The theme of that was digital transformation post-COVID-19. And we dealt with digital transformation of the public service, digital skills, digital identity, creating a single regulator, technology solutions, creating a regional travel bubble. We had so many partners working with us on that. But we felt that there needed to be a specific focus on ICT and education, and this is why we held this two-day forum in partnership with UNESCO, ITU, and with the support of the OECS. The themes, we looked, of course, at the progress made since the 2012 forum in Barbados a decade ago, before there was a pandemic, before there was this imperative, global imperative, and certainly a national and regional imperative to push our children towards online learning almost immediately. And then we recognized that there were huge gaps, as pointed out by the ITU representative, in relation to connectivity. It's so critical. Without connectivity, we could forget about online learning. Well, I shouldn't say that, because Viasat has also demonstrated that there are other means by which you can, like traditional television, traditional media, radio, so that you can push content. But the truth is, it is not as rich an experience if you talk about internet access, access to smart devices, and so on. So there's still a bit of a disadvantage. And so we looked at the progress made since Barbados 2012. And we are happy that the recordings will be made available to you so that we can review the discussion. And it is definitely our intention to produce a report of this meeting and a list of policy recommendations for regional governments and other stakeholders. We looked at the competency framework also that was presented at that conference in Barbados 10 years ago, and what has happened, where it has been implemented. And we saw in Dominica, and certainly in the case of the Caribbean Examinations Council, that it is in fact being used, and it is guiding their own development of the curriculum and of the syllabus. As is pointed out by CXC, syllabi. Hey, but they're the authorities, so I will go with that. Theme 3, the future of the classroom, smart technology. Again, the platforms, and we're pleased that Google, the company Google Incorporated, was able to give us that comprehensive presentation. I don't know if you're still on, but Google was sort of the de facto, in many cases, because it was there, it was free, it was available. They've been doing a lot of work in that space. And so I know from my own experience as a parent that Google Classroom helped us as a region to pivot very quickly from the chalk and talk that Dr. Jules pointed out to the, what was it? Chalk and talk.
Sage on stage.
Sage on the stage.
And guide
on the side.
Guide on the side.
Right. We haven't made that full transition, but I totally understand what he's saying, and it's true. I remember when I was, when my son was in primary school, his teacher would, she would take his smartphone and give it to them, you know, for help if she needed help downloading an app. These are 7, 8 year-olds, and it's the mature teacher. And of course, they're much more tech savvy. So how the role of teachers in that sense is different. You know, they don't have all of the knowledge. The knowledge that exists today on YouTube and on the internet in general, on online learning platforms, is much more than any one single teacher can master. And so how does that teacher guide their students toward the information? How do they teach them the research skills? To understand that if you have an assignment, it's not Google it, cut and paste, submit. You know, it's a whole different ball game. So the technology supporting education, and we appreciate also the presentation from Keneton with very much, because I love to see the indigenous and regional solutions. Again, as Dr. Jules pointed out, you can see the Karodi swamp as opposed to
Caroni.
What did I say?
Well, I'm just saying, because I know you're from Barbados, so, you know, as I may mispronounce something in Barbados.
Well, thank you.
But I didn't want my Trinity friends, I didn't want my Trinity friends taking a dig at you.
All right, fair enough. Thanks for that. So, you know, we're seeing some local content, and that is good. And I think it's good for our cultural identity. And of course, the issue of the psychological issues, the social issues. And I really enjoyed the presentation from our last presenter, Raj, I call it. Raj, yes. Raj
kept it real.
Who kept it real. I like those kinds of presentations, and I think it was actually very direct and very real. So, and I think a lot of people will identify with what you put forward. Of course, Dion Alton, known him for a long time, child online protection is critical. So, very often our children stumble on to inappropriate material because, you know, as you mentioned, little tips and tricks you can do to ensure that there's adequate supervision. But not everyone is a cybersecurity expert like Dion and able to, you know, access logs on his home firewall and determine where my children have gone. Yeah, so, you know, we're talking about parents who have not grown up with the internet and who are not cybersecurity experts. So there's that as well. We did 2 polls today, and I'll just share the results. What type of online threats are you most concerned about that impact children? Number 1, cyber predators. So it very much fits with what you presented beyond. And number 2, harmful content. The second one was what types of capabilities would you like to see in distance learning technologies for children? Number 1 was collaboration tools. And time for second place, learning management systems, which tied with assistive technology. So persons with disabilities and so on. And of course, you know, these types of crises tend to highlight those persons who are most vulnerable. So it's not the persons who can afford the internet, who can afford the computer, who can afford everything, but those persons who are vulnerable. And as was pointed out by our clinical psychologist today, we're talking about the Miss Alicia Hoyt. We're talking not just about those children who have access and the dangers they're exposed to, but the children, and there are many of them who have not had access to either devices or internet, or to home supervision, or to that home environment that is conducive to learning. So what will it mean down the road, 5 years, 10 years from now? There's no playbook, as has been pointed out so many times for this, for many of us who are alive today. And so in closing, I want to thank our partners. I want to thank Dr. Sadia Sanchez, the Director and Representative of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, Cluster Office in Jamaica. Cluster Office for the Caribbean in Jamaica, Mr. Cleveland Thomas, the area representative, ITU area representative, Mr. Sylvester Cadet, program officer, who also was a presenter and speaker. And of course, with the support of His Excellency, Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General of the OECS, and I see his statements have been getting some very good press coverage because I believe they resonate so well with our stakeholders. And there are many speakers, but I will name them. I think you're okay on time. Dr. Carlos Vargas Tamez, Mr. Victor Perez Rubio, both from UNESCO, Michelle Marias and Dion Olton, who presented on behalf of the ITU, Dr. Didicus Jules and Mr. Jermaine Anthony of the OECS, Ms. Bernadette Lewis of the Commonwealth Telecoms Organization and former Secretary General of the CTU, Mr. Michael Lubin of Viasat and his co-presenters Chris Daring of ReadyNet and Dr. Maria Miles Hamilton, no stranger to us, of the Spectrum Management Authority of Jamaica, Dr. Eduardo Ali, CXC, Robert Geese of the Ministry of Education, Dominica, Mr. Sabino Garcia of Google Inc., Mr. Akhenaton, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the board of Rackstave, long-standing associate of the CTU. Ms. Alicia White, the clinical psychologist, I really did enjoy your presentation, and I thought that we could not have this conference, this forum, without having that perspective in respect to mental health. And of course, Raj, I'll just call you Raj, restore a sense of a can. Again, no stranger to the CTU. Appreciate your candidness and the veracity of your presentation. Our sponsors, of course, Viasat, our top level sponsor, Viasat, a CTU member, again, very recently joined a CTU member, and we appreciate our private sector members, especially those who are contributing to the development of the region in terms of infrastructure, in terms of economic investment, job creation, providing access to rural connectivity, and we really want to build on this partnership as we go forward. Rackstave, of course, again, coming on board to be able to demonstrate the platform that is being developed. Our streaming partner, Internet Society, always there, Mr. Jolie McPhee, who had provided the streaming services for us as always. Thank you, Jolie. And of course, our able Master of Ceremonies chairperson,
Thank you.
Ms. Josanne Leonard. Always look forward to sharing this platform with you. Our regional media, staff of the CTU, special mention to Francola, Shania, Michelle, and Renisa. I'm sure I will get into trouble because I didn't call everyone, but but we appreciate you. Richard, see, so I mean,
Richard would not have been forgivable.
I had Richard down here at the last for special mention.
That's a very good comeback.
So you and our over 514 registered participants over the 2 days. And I think that's pretty good for online forum, and we had very active participation over the 2 days. But I have to remind you that we do have an upcoming webinar on Monday, Traversing the Metaverse, a Caribbean Perspective. And this is on Monday, the 31st of January, 2022. And you can get all of the details on ctu.int. And we want to encourage you to join us on that, because we're hearing a lot about the metaverse, and we think it's important, even in terms of building up your knowledge, awareness, your competency around these topics that we present. We work with global and regional partners to be able to bring you up to speed on what the issues are. So I see we have on camera our representative from the ITU, Mr. Sylvester Cadet. I think people are still talking about your intervention on yesterday, sir. So I think it was very impactful. Thank you for providing us with with those numbers. And I would ask Richard to cue him up now to go ahead and give his remarks. Thank you. You're on, Sylvester.
First of all, thank you so much, Secretary General. Don't try guessing No, it is, of course. But it has been a pleasure collaborating with the CTU over the years, and surely in this particular forum, it has been a great pleasure to reach entities. This particular forum has been quite insightful in that we necessarily to embrace as we move forward to dealing with ICT's education, not only from the perspective of the immediacy that is brought on by COVID-19, but the approach to education and to our ultimate socio
problems.
Is it live or is it what I'm saying? Is it
development? I really want to feedback. Can you all hear me?
You may be breaking up a bit. I'm not sure if that's the experience for everyone, but you're breaking up in the room here.
Oh, can you hear me clearly now?
That's much better, yes.
Okay, yes, so I was just about indicating that the various critical topics that were being addressed during the course of the last 2 days, and surely I would want to thank my colleagues of the ITU who addressed issues related to Giga and the Giga initiative, Ms. Michelle Marios, as well as child online protection issues dealt with by Dion. And surely in his very last intervention, he talked about understanding how to be digital citizens. That's one critical component that needs to it as digital civics. So digital civics would necessarily become our next cadre of entrepreneurs or next cadre of citizens. On the issue of which is very critical and issues related to connectivity, we saw presentation of very interesting to ICT in education, and especially the sections dealt with
Sylvester, you're breaking up, so we're going to stop the video and
Mr. Akena. I'm breaking up again.
Yeah, go ahead. We've closed the video so that we can hopefully get better audio quality. That's fine. So
okay, then. I anticipate you can hear me clearly now.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to quickly mention, the issues related to infrastructure was highlighted by Mr. Michael Luben, especially the options mentioned of critical importance that needs to be incorporated into the whole concept of ICT in education. If we are to ensure well-structured integrated development approach, then of course one issue that was highlighted by the speaker on mental health is she incorporated what is referred to as corporate social responsibility. I believe often in the creative and cohesive combination of public and private. And I think this is critical when we address not just the impact it's having, especially on IQ, EQ, of course, in terms of mental health. issues related to persons with disabilities also. That is a critical area that needs to be looked at. So the question is now, what next and where do we go from here? I recall this in Wonderland. She asked the ever-present white rabbit, and therefore we need to define clearly, we need to articulate clearly where we want to get to as an of this forum, the next level, to the next stage, and in the implementation of ICT pinnacles in the education sector. And speaking about roads, then how do we set a path? I recall, and I'll end with this, the words by Antonio Machado. He said, "Traveler, there are no roads. The road is made by walking." So just like mountain goats creating their own path on steep and precipitous mountains, so too we need to beat a path for ourselves simply because map just on true operation in the Caribbean what exists elsewhere. We can learn from it, but we need to craft a new approach to ICTs and the integration of ICTs in every single aspect of human endeavor through our education system. It can be a huge mountain, but traveler. The road is made by walking. I thank CTU again, UNESCO, OECS, all the speakers and the participants, and also to the CTU staff who really played a monumental role in getting and planning this activity. So I want to again thank the CTU, and we look forward to further collaboration as we move forward with ICTs in education and socioeconomic development in the region. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so you missed a lot of what I was saying. Okay. I want to thank Ms. Yolanda Pierre of Northgate College for your contribution. I'm not sure if you're still online, but thanks for your contribution. I said I visited Northgate, and I like the approach that Northgate has taken in terms of creating a hybrid environment for virtual and in-class teaching. So, over to you.
Right, and I want to be part of the one of the goats that Sylvester just referred to in terms of us navigating, creating a path. So we all have to, we all have to be goats, Frank Ola, so we can create the path. I mean, a lot of very, very, very rich content and direction and initiatives that it would be a pity if we just sort of close a fold on this one and went to the next, as we have to do without having some follow-up continuity and onward. So a special thank you to all of the participants who stayed who came in yesterday, stayed all during the morning session yesterday and today, and the media for the coverage in anticipation as well. Not necessarily sexy topics, but very important topics for the Caribbean. So thank you, CTU, for having me. And we will see you next Monday.
Monday, that's right.
Monday with the metaverse. And I know that you have some exciting speakers lined up for that.
We do.
You can check the CTU website maybe to get some information, ctu.int. Have a great rest of the day, everyone, and continue to engage. Engage. Au revoir. See you next time.